Nice.
Save 40 million free coins.
Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? Good evening, Alex.
Yeah, got a different setup.
Well, what's it look like to you?
Green screen
Oh, yeah,
background.
yeah. That's a feature in Zoom. It took me a while to find it.
Oh, yeah.
It's under views. When you go
Oh,
views and background or something like that,
oh, mm,
different things. Under view or
mm.
whatever, take a look. I don't think it records it for some reason. I don't know. Anyhow, is it, are you sub freezing temperature in Manhattan?
It's pretty cold. Although it's supposed to get a little warmer.
Yeah, but right now,
Yeah, it's pretty cold today. I went out.
what is it? What I saw was
30s.
uh come on, baby. And Sussex, New York City, 35. Oh, that's no bad. That's not too bad. My brother's out in New Jersey is like 5 degrees colder, but it was
Oh,
like 25 degrees yesterday. It's probably 25, 30 in New York yesterday. Ice, snow on the ground.
oh yeah. Must have
Well,
been for a few days.
people not don't go out. I know
Not as
I have a
much.
question. Do they still ride the bikes in those lanes going
Oh
zoom?
yeah. Yeah.
Boy, that's a delivery. Okay, so well, today, unless you want to go over anything you want to chat about, I saw those two things you had. They were interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to play them and then you comment about them, all right?
I mean, another thing
I think
is
if I play them, I think it's going to record better. That's my
yeah.
main thing.
The other thing again is this
Oh, I
AI.
have something. Wait, before we do that, I have something I want you to see. So let me go do that, which is about Japan in World War II.
Oh,
It's not really that, in other words, it's not contemporary.
and you didn't hear from Jim.
I
We were
haven't had some
we
gym in a
were
while.
supposed
No.
to meet up earlier at
You,
this friend of his was showing this documentary at NYU, and he told me about it. I signed up for it. I went, and he didn't show up. So
oh, but you went.
yeah, so I called him. He didn't say anything. I called Gail. Gail doesn't know what's up with him. So
But
Gail's from
what
Columbia.
was the documentary about?
It's about the bankruptcy of Detroit that they went through a few years
Yeah.
ago. It was actually pretty good. They interviewed a lot of the people who dealt with, who
What's that fat
the
guy? The fat guy who
emergency
did that?
controller, sorry, emergency manager, and they interviewed Governor Snyder, who's a complete criminal and should be. He's a murderer. I mean, he literally murdered people in Flint because they knew the water was poison and did nothing about it. That's his office did. It's just
He
crystal
murdered
clear.
people. A governor?
Yeah, of Michigan, Snyder is.
How did he
Oh,
murder?
I mean, depraved indifference, manslaughter. Because again, if if you had if you were renting a room in your house and you knew that yeah, your water was literally poison, that there was lead in your water as a landlord, you and you just let your renter poison them and their kids, that's literally what happened in Flint, Michigan. And not just that, again, they knew they had Legionnaire's disease in the water and did nothing about that either. People died from that too. So I mean, again, it's in the dozens.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, how heavy was the? I mean, in other words, yeah, people are going to die from lower immune systems. I mean, what percentage of the population that drank the bad water died?
It's in the dozens who probably prematurely died. And got cancers and
I mean, there's a few people who had heart attacks watching
no,
the
no, no,
final.
no. I mean, and also again, there are clear it's also the damage it did to particularly again young, to young people again. Lead will basically permanently um, affect you cognitively. These are people who have like you know spasms and stuff like that. It's you can look it up. I mean, it's pretty horrible if you look at
Oh,
some of
okay.
these kids who have had these effects. I mean, of course, that's why they got lead out of the gasoline because it
Yes,
was
I know. I know. It also
unleaded.
correlated with a higher rate of crime.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, no, no. Again, that's a big argument. Why crime? That's a people argue crime. Yeah, crime went down in the 70s and 80s because they took lead out of the paint, out of the gasoline, and out of a bunch of other stuff.
I understand, but you got to be careful on certain things. Or say like, well, this governor is guilty of people dying. Why is that? He didn't make sure the kids had a rounded diet, so they died of malnutrition because they ate too much candy or something.
Oh, this is
Oh.
more like he made sure that no food would get to
And
them.
so you're
that,
saying
that
it's
if you that if you say, oh, well,
criminal
if
neglect,
what?
criminal neglect.
Yeah, well, it's depraved indifference, homicide.
Um,
You
what did he
would
have
have.
to do? How easy was the solution? How
It,
long did it take him
it
to
was
solve?
very easy. Again, they were basically they just had to go back. They were on the Detroit water, the water company from Detroit, because everybody knew again how polluted the Flint. They switched over to the Flint River, and everybody, thanks to the auto companies had dumped, essentially everything. I mean, yeah, I'm just started reading this book on, about Tom's River out in New Jersey, which is another one of these like big super fun sites. And this guy, he did a Pulitzer Prize winning book on again the whole history of until they finally started to do something about it, like in the 90s. But yeah, and then in that case again, it was the they were famous for their for dyeing, dyeing clothing and stuff like that, DYE, coloring. So they just dumped all that stuff from the business there like started like in the 20s, so they've been dumping for like 70 years. Then
Yeah,
yeah, and
but I
again
mean,
they had a cancer cluster, and it's like you ever see a civil action,
no,
the John Travolta film, which is very good based on a real case. a smaller one again, somewhere in New England.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying it's sort of like, oh, like that's, what's happening now? This is interesting. I got to get your opinion on this. I was shocked. They were saying, because Trump suspending foreign aid, 1.5 million people are going to die from malaria, and another 1.5 million people are going to die from HIV immediately because we're not.
They don't get any replacement.
And I was shocked. Wait, let me finish the sentence. I was shocked mostly by the millions of people that are dependent upon U.S. aid. I mean, it's like, what is this? When did we become the medical office for the world? Most of these countries where these epidemics are going on are in Africa. But I mean,
we want to do it. I mean, mainly the U.S. government, again, including again, on the right, because it gives us control.
Well,
we can say, if you don't want us to, if you want us to help you with, this health problem,
them, right?
or you gotta, and literally again, this is what happened. You have to put in a U.S. military base, or you have to let you have to sell Apple you have to sell us your cobalt so we can make cell phones out of that. That's literally what happens.
Well, yeah, but I don't think that most of the countries that we're sending aid to aren't civilized enough to be blackmailed. There's not, there's just not enough organization.
It's the poorest countries that you can get for pennies on the dollar, essentially. I mean, we have I mean, like if you look at like Honduras or El Salvador, which are pretty underdeveloped. I mean, the U.S. control is like quite strong. I mean, literally we can change who's president basically. Because the military is working for us anyway. So get rid of anybody and have. We don't like, including again, shooting.
Okay, all right, that's enough.
Some of these countries, the military will disappear people for this.
Okay, we've thrown enough. That's all. I just want to make sure we threw enough dirt on America first before we start anything else. So let me go on to this thing.
There is there going to be much of the U.S. left when Trump?
There you go. Let's kick it while it's down before it dies. Okay.
We're definitely on our way down. But yeah, Ken, you had something you wanted to.
Oh yeah. I got something I want to show you this about World War II. This is very short, but then I'd like to hear your opinion about it. So let me see if I can find it. And I got a thing here. Let's go here. Let me just go there and share. Oh, wait a minute. I did that. Okay. So let me go share there and see this. That doesn't work. Okay. So I'm going to do it the other way. 1 second. I'm going to do it the special share. Advanced share. Portion of the screen. Okay. There we go. Let's hear you speak up, lady. Come on. Where's your volume? Where's the volume on this? All right, let me stop for a second. Oh, there it is. I got it.
Happening all at
today. You are
three really bad things that happened in 4 days. Talk about a concentration of really bad events from a Japanese point of view happening all at
today.
Three really bad things that happened in 4 days. Talk about a concentration of really bad events from a Japanese point of view happening all at once. When you want to talk about this is the psychological shattering that actually happens to the Japanese. First, the United States drops an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. 2 days later, the Russians pour 1.5 million people into Manchuria, the nightmare scenario of the Japanese army. And they know if this war protracts, the Russians are going to come down through Manchuria, down the Korean Peninsula, onto Hokkaido, and down the home islands. It'll yield a divided Japan if it goes on for a long time. And then You have the next day, the United States drops the second atomic bomb with a bluff. The idea being we're going to keep doing this daily or every other day, except we don't have any more atomic bombs and we cannot build them quickly for a long time. So that's big bluff. Three really bad things that happened in 4 days. Talk about
Okay,
a concentration of
I'm
really
going to
bad.
stop this for a second because there was another thing she said about Japan.
Today you
I
are.
can find.
You may have.
There was a spat. Imagine what.
Still too lazy to.
Nah.
Imagine there was a spat.
Three really bad things that happened in 4 days. Talk about a
Not that. That's not what I wanted to show you. Oh, I know where it is. Wait, I know where I can find it. And we got time to kill, so let me find it here. It's up here. There we go. And it's not the full list of judges. Let me increase the size of this. Oh, let me stop sharing for a second. Give me a moment to find this. Here it is. I got it. Okay.
Japan never.
Now I can go and share. This woman is very unusual. She seems like a character out of a movie. Now watch this. Share, portion, share, and here it is. Japan never really had a chance. Okay.
Japan never produced more than 1/113th U.S. steel and coal production. It never did more than 10% of what U.S. munitions productions were. I believe if you do the math and take all the battleships and divide people into everything, that each U.S. soldier had 4 tons of equipment per, whereas each Japanese soldier had about 2 pounds of equipment. Japanese main weapons in this war were the grenade and the bayonet. Their artillery and machine guns were very obsolete, what they had going into the Pacific War. And then you flip it around and look at the United States. The United States had about 18 men in supply, or men and women, but mostly men, in supply services supporting each rifleman at the front. Other militaries in this period had about an 8-to-1 ratio. Japan had about a 1-to-1. So Japan's already suffering food shortages before Pearl Harbor. Japan never produced more than 1/113th U.S. steel and coal production. It never did more than 10% of what U.S. munitions productions were. I believe if you do the math and take all the battleships and divide people into everything, that each U.S. soldier had 4 tons of equipment per, whereas each Japanese soldier had about 2 pounds of equipment. Japanese main weapons in this war were the grenade and the bayonet. Their artillery and machine guns were very obsolete, what they had going into the Pacific War. And then you flip it around and look at the United States. The United States had about 18 men in supply, or men and women, but mostly men, in supply services supporting each rifleman at the front. Other militaries in this period had about an 8-to-1 ratio. Japan had about a 1-to-1. So Japan's already suffering food shortages before Pearl Harbor. Japan never produced.
I'm just looping there, so I'm going to stop it. Okay, you got that. It's like something I never heard anybody talk about that we were just numerically in terms of resources, the U.S. versus Japan, it's like a monster, like a Tyrannosaurus Rex going after a deer. Assuming her statements are correct. Have you ever had somebody discuss that kind of a viewpoint?
Yeah, no, she's absolutely right about the material imbalance. I think she exaggerates a bit that Japanese military technology was so bad. That's a lot of people would disagree with her there, but yeah, other than that, she's absolutely right.
I mean, you think that they
controversial? That's not, especially among military historians. That's what they when you talk about the Pacific War, that's where you start. Essentially that it was almost hopeless for Japan from the beginning, and they knew it. They knew that they didn't work out enough. That they were at that point they were being outproduced by the U.S. The U.S. economy was like 8 times bigger. So something like around that 8 or 9 times bigger, depending on how you count. So, you know,
Right. Okay,
and
so
of course
now,
the U.S. economy wasn't, at full production then. So,
okay, now I think this is yours. What's next in Washington? Is that it?
which is that the one from Democracy
I got
Now?
one
Not
from the
China.
Atlantic and one from Democracy Now. So
Okay, yeah,
which one do you want me to do first?
the China one, right?
What's that? Democracy Now?
No,
No,
that's the other one.
Atlantic, right? Okay.
I think
All
it should-
right, let me just do that. Here comes an article from The Atlantic, a very prestigious magazine, interesting to
not-
read.
I don't think it's from the Atlantic.
It says there, The Atlantic.
Wait,
And let's go.
it should be about China. I think he's referring to the Atlantic.
Come on.
I mean, the guy does not work for the. It's,
All right, let me do it.
Robert Wright, who runs the blogging heads anyway. He's a very smart guy who does some very good interviews.
Boy, I really mess up when I try to do this. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so you
Now that disappeared on me. Boy,
it's not your day.
there we go.
Oh yeah, this is the one. Yeah. No, it's just they're just referencing. You'll see they're referencing an article, but I think you can go back to the beginning because I think it starts before.
All right,
Go back to 00. Yeah, there's a little intro. Yeah,
there's a guy talking.
yeah. Well, he's the host.
Okay, so let's hit the go.
Let me show you a magazine cover that I am old enough to remember.
You should be old enough for this. Well,
This is from 1989, the cover of the Atlantic magazine, which was one of the most important magazines in America, monthly, containing Japan. What that reflects is what was very much the mood of the time in America. There was this idea that Japan posed this huge threat. A lot of people talked about it as mainly an economic threat, economic dominance, but there was a concern about actual war eventually breaking out. There was a book called The Coming War with Japan, published in 1991. The reason I bring this up is because that mood reminds me very much of the mood now about China. There is great concern about China's sheerly economic power. First of all, here, in fact, is a banner headline from today's New York Times. China's global trade surplus hits a record. It's worth a headline. I'm not sure that, it would have gotten a banner across the business page 10 years ago, back when we were less concerned about China, but we are very concerned about China now. And there are a lot of ways in which China does merit a certain kind of concern, but I do think it's worth looking back and asking what happened to the great Japanese threat when everyone was freaked out because they were running such a large trade surplus, were buying up golf courses like Pebble Beach, I think Rockefeller Center. I think most of those things they wound up losing money on, but at the time it was considered, some kind of affront to American dignity that somebody other than us would own certain golf courses. And it was just freaking us out, okay? Japan was the great peril of the day, according to the average American commentator. So that's 1989, 1991. Okay, so let's see. What time is it? Oh, it's 35 years later. I don't think Japan has invaded the U.S. or taken it over. In fact, it's built a number of car factories in the U.S. We worked things out. And really, Japan, not long thereafter, entered a period of kind of economic stagnation, fueled partly by demographic changes, low birth rate, a lot of stuff. Anyway, you look back now, and it would be reasonable to ask, what were we worried about? And you may say, well, okay, but Japan was a formal ally. We had military bases there. China is different. Well, yeah, but that's kind of my point. Because if we got that freaked out by a country where we had military bases and they were a very cooperative ally, that suggests that we tend to get a little too freaked out about stuff generally on the international stage. And I would submit that we're doing that with China now. China's a very different problem. It's a much more complicated problem. I don't dismiss how challenging a foreign policy issue it is, but I'm mainly saying that people of a certain age can remember when there was something approaching hysteria about the threat that Japan posed. You look back now and you're like, well, that problem just took care of itself. And in retrospect, it was really probably kind of crazy to worry about the coming war with Japan. I don't think it's crazy to worry about the coming war with China, but one reason I don't is because I think in our fear of China, we're doing a number of things that actually make war more likely. And by the way, there's some real parallels between China now and Japan then, including the demographic one, low birth rate that is posing long-term economic problems. The difference is that there's actually more evidence of it in the case of China now than there was with Japan then. Then you could have kind of seen it coming if you had done the analytical work maybe, but with China, it's already in the news that the government is trying to get people to have more kids. They're not doing it. Long-term problems, real estate crisis. There's a lot of problems. And, you know, there's some economic handicaps China has that Japan didn't have. I mean, for example, it is, as people have noted, a repressive regime, and there is in fact, been so much kind of heavy-handed treatment by the government of entrepreneurs because it's an authoritarian country and the regime is insecure, that some of these companies are having more trouble drawing investment than they used to have as a result of these policies. Obviously, China has like a lot more people than Japan. It's a bigger economy than Japan's. Its military is now much bigger than Japan's ever was. All those things are true. I mean, China is a rising power. And that definitely poses challenges whenever you have a rising power, because it just kind of inherently demands adjustment in the global system and people find it threatening. But I do think the nature of the challenge posed by China is misunderstood. You often hear that China wants to impose its authoritarian form of government on us. Ultimately, it wants to export it to the world. There's no good evidence of that. All the evidence is that the U.S. has spent more time trying to export its political model by a long shot than China has. And, you know, look, I like the model of liberal democracy. If it can be exported, great, although I don't want to do it forcibly. But the fact is, China is kind of ultra pragmatic in its international relations in ways that lead it to be much more indifferent, really, to the ideology of countries it's doing business with than the U.S. is. So I just think that's like a misunderstanding. I'd love to see the evidence that China wants to turn all countries into China. Now, what China does want is the prerogatives and respect that are traditionally associated with big, powerful countries, because it is becoming one. There's no doubt about that. And I think here it would be useful to keep in mind the things that we have considered rightfully ours by virtue of our power. You know, Monroe Doctrine. In other words, we wanted, in effect, the acknowledgement of the military dominance of our neighborhood. China wants a certain amount of that. I'm not saying it's all good that they do, but I'm saying the fact that they want it doesn't mean that they want to destroy America. It means they're acting just like America acted as it became a rising power. It wanted to exert military power in its region, have a big sphere of influence. We wanted to exert influence in international institutions. China wants to do that in the World Health Organization, everywhere else. So there are a lot of things that China does that are taken as threatening, but are actually just things rising powers do, things we did as a rising power. And the best way to ensure that those things do lead to war is to not acknowledge the fact that they are just the things that countries in China's situation do. I don't mean that we shouldn't push back against any of them. I don't mean that we shouldn't keep an eye on what they're doing in their region. And of course, Taiwan poses a unique problem. It's just unlike any other problem by virtue of the fact that it was part of China in the past. China considers it still part of China and a lot of stuff. I would like to keep China from invading Taiwan if possible. But even succeeding there, preventing war in Taiwan, I think is best done if we don't have an exaggerated idea of how much menace is posed by a lot of other things China's doing, which are things that you would expect a rising power to do, regardless of whether it's just like pure capitalist democracy or, as China is, a statist, capitalist, authoritarian country. And again, I'd rather it weren't that kind of country. I'd rather it weren't authoritarian. But I don't think, it's within our power to change that. And I guarantee you the way to change it is not to generate as much hostility as possible between the two superpowers. So I think one thing the Japan experience teaches us is that sometimes problems just go away, okay? Now, I'm not saying that the China issue, the China challenge is going to magically vanish vanish overnight, or that it doesn't demand careful attention and carefully orchestrated and thought out policy. There are a lot of issues you got to focus on. But I do think there are a number of problems that do eventually go away unless you overreact to them, unless you misdiagnose them. There are a lot of problems in life that actually will go away unless you freak out. You know, human psychology is funny. You can just get into threat perception mode. You can kind of decide that somebody's a threat, an adversary, an enemy. You know, and some of them you might as well write off. Maybe they're hopeless cases. I know people that I genuinely think belong in that category. But, you know, the problem with getting in that mode is then you're in zero-sum mode and you don't see the opportunities for constructive engagement, win-win outcomes, you know, playing non-zero-sum games to successful outcomes. And with China, there's just a ton of that. I mean, first of all, economic engagement has a lot of that. They have a lot of rare earth minerals and things we need, for example. Then there's a whole set of global or transnational challenges where the object of the game is to avoid the lose-lose outcome. You know, climate change, bioweapons. I think keeping AI from being a destructive force. There's just a ton of that stuff. And so long as we live in terror of China and see it as a threat that has to be confronted, we're very unlikely to make progress on those fronts, to seize the opportunities, to play the non-zero-sum games, the many and growing number of non-zero-sum games to a successful outcome. Speaking of which, if what I've said makes sense to you, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my Non-Zero newsletter, the Non-Zero podcast, where you'll find a lot of material, I think, relevant to this and relevant broadly to the challenge of playing non-zero-sum games to win-win outcomes. And of course, rate and review, smash the like button, and so on. Thank you.
Well, okay. Yeah. Guys, what a fetch. It goes back and forth. Well, I'm not saying, I didn't mean to say, but but it would, but don't worry about it. Just relax. What's the difference? And that doesn't matter. And it's going to go away. It may not be here tomorrow.
He likes to do well.
Well, who is he?
Usually he has,
who he is?
somebody on to have a dialogue. That's his.
Do you know who he is?
He's a good interviewer. I mean, he's smart guy, obviously.
Is he a professor? Sounds like a professor.
No. Forget if he's an academic. He's been doing this channel blog. He used to run the Blogging Heads TV channel, which is was pretty popular. This is his
he's just a pundit, a opinion person. He's got
more than that again, because he mostly does interviews, and he gets a pretty wide variety of people that come and talk to him on the different political spectrums, and so he's
Okay, so now regarding what he went over, which was there's a big guy on the block. He makes a lot of noise. He's making money, and there's a lot of activity going on. But don't worry about it. It's just it's a big bluff, and he thinks a lot about himself. But don't worry. And I mean, I've seen Chinese technology is incredible. I think you didn't attend this thing. I showed a video of them where they had 2 lakes and a mountain in between them. And they had boats over here and boats over here. So their solution was to build a transom, like an aqueduct up here of water, take the boats, lift them up with an elevator. Then they go along this aqueduct was about 2 miles. And then they lower them down into the other lake. An incredible engineering job, just amazing, out in the middle of nowhere, and it's some mountains, and they keep doing that. The railroad. I watched a whole documentary about a bullet train to Tibet, and it was very difficult because they had to build it over the tundra, which is frozen part of the year and not frozen the other part of the year. They've become very advanced technologically, and it's just as you see what goes on in the United States, it's a task to try and govern 1.5 billion people. We have a task trying to govern 320 million people.
Yeah.
you know, and to control 1.5 billion people, you got to, you know, iron fist. And they're doing it and they're advancing and it's capitalism and it's all over the place. You know, it's very commercial when you go there. And everybody, you know, what I see, everybody's doing good and they got a great history and intelligence and a culture, very tight culture, you know, culturally oriented, almost like as strong as the Japanese are, you know, how they act. Or
The
like,
Japanese borrowed a lot of
not this free flowing.
culture from China. So it's not surprising.
Well, yeah. So, and they're
Including
expanding all over the
including
place.
part of their language.
With the Silk Road, and I think they sent the rocket to the moon. You know what I mean, so forth and so on. They're not. They don't have a. They're not doing the quantum theory thing, quantum physics. They don't have you know, a centrifuge, you know, that sends the, you know, the kind of thing we have in Europe. And you want, I think
maybe not that big, but I'm sure they have.
the something collider. They call them colliders. You know, so they're doing advanced physics research, and they don't have but they're doing good in the movies. They make pretty good movies, you know.
Yeah. Pretty big market.
So, what do you think about that? Is he underplaying? Is he going like? I don't. I agree with him. There's no point in worrying. No point. That worry doesn't get anything done. But
I mean, I think his point is, you know, that to have this obsession with China and to be, you know, Pollyanna, you know, the sky is falling and we need to do something about China right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the bigger issue is, you know, are you going to make things worse, or, you know, are you going to start a war because you're, again, basically, you know,
well, I would
being too alarmist. Are you going to?
Yeah, but I mean, I would feel much better about the future of the world and everything if we were allied with China. We were doing like a joint space venture or trying to build bridges.
They talked about that, you know. They talk about, well, they want, you know, we should have both of us countries should have, you know, a win-win where they can both. But you know, Americans don't like to think like we like to think, oh, you know, we win and you lose. You know,
maybe
sports, whatever.
What if we could get atheist China and Christian Western civilization to align together and destroy the Muslims?
And they're not
the Muslims
atheists either, Ken. You know
what?
They're not atheists either. I mean, part of the Chinese, part of the Communist Party of China, maybe, but probably most Chinese are, you know, they're, you know, believe in ancestor worship, or, you know, Buddhism, Taoism, something along that line. I mean,
yeah,
it's a pretty. I mean, I don't know. Again, I haven't.
They have five
religious countries.
They have five authorized religions.
Just you have to go beyond, like, you know.
They have five religions that your father have.
Views of religion. Yeah.
They have some Christians. They have some Jews.
Yeah, no, they have a Catholic church.
No, basically they're atheists, and even the Buddhists. You know.
No, Buddhism is. No.
Yeah, sure it is.
Then you might as well say, well, then why is it? Well, I mean, first off, that's a very culturally. I mean, just dumb way of looking.
No. Wait a second.
That's a very chauvinist way of.
No.
Basically saying, well, if you're not, that's essentially trying to say, oh, if you're not, you know, a monotheistic religion.
Somebody else is popping in here. It's Jim. Hi, Jim. Hmm? You missed the show. Let's wait till Jim comes in. No. Hold it. Slow down. The Abrahamic religions, you know. Even Islam, Judaism, and Christianity all believe in Mr. God, you know. It's a guy, it's a separate entity, it's a consciousness. It's not the force. It's not the general collection of all minds. When you get the collection of all life, then you're into Buddha, religion.
There are versions of Buddhism and I mean, Buddhism never in Hinduism they never say that God is singular or not.
Right.
There are interpretations of especially Hindu
No,
religion
no, to
that
understand.
say, oh, it's you can interpret this to say, yes, well, it's one God.
Well, now wait a second. Wait a second.
Just that's
If you believe in one thing, you could say, well, I can look at Buddhism from my viewpoint to say and define it as aligning with my viewpoint that there is a special entity. Jim gave up. He saw that I was here, so he said, I'm going to get out of here. So anyhow, but or you could look at Christianity and say, well, God, or Jesus or God himself in the Old Testament, that's just an incarnation. That's just, God became somebody so he could talk to them and they could think of him, because the people on the earth weren't ready to take on the concept of, God is the universe, all life, the force, let the force be with you. So but it's not, the Asian population, yes, they're very mysterious, they're superstitious. That's true. But there's 5 religions that are accepted by the CCP, Christianity, but they rewrote the Bible. Jim keeps plopping out. He's trying to get in. He can't make it. But anyhow, that's fine. So how do you evaluate it with China? Should we keep a blind, don't fall asleep, keep one eye open?
Oh no, again, I think we exaggerate. I'm with that guy. I think we exaggerate the China threat well, in part because, how else are you going to justify spending more money on the military than the rest of the planet? I mean, you have to at least pretend that, oh yeah, there are these real threats out there. I mean, that's where it started again. Then unfortunately, again, we turned the fake threats into real ones because, of course, us spending that much money convinces the Chinese and the Russians like, oh, then we got to spend money just so that the U.S. can't swamp us. So let's and then it creates then you get into an arms race, which is
well, I mean, I think
an interesting thing. Again, this time we're the ones who's losing it because we're plunging our economy into or have been for chaos.
that's all going to get fixed. Trump's the president now. Things will get much better fast. But I'm just saying that I think I think the one thing I would agree with is stop getting into this confrontational situation with Russia or China. They're there they are. It's like somebody lives down the street and so forth. You got to work things out so that
not going to get rid of that.
You get co-support, coexistence. You can, that's fine. Can I come over there? Let's play. That's the Olympic Games, that kind of a thing. Let's do something together. Let's exchange cultures. Let's exchange economies. So he's right. But on the one hand, so he avoided talking about any of the criminal activities that are considered to be immoral by the Western civilization, of like organ transplants and forced rehabilitation.
The idea that that's Falun Gong propaganda, just so you know.
Oh, really?
The whole organ harvesting, that's just.
You tend to.
There is almost nothing. And it's also based on a misunderstanding of,
Yeah, they don't do that right.
I think it actually just in Chinese law, there's some point. I mean, again, not all countries, again, make it so you can't, pay for an organ. So I think there was something like that at some point, which again they don't I think they do anymore. But again, the idea, oh yeah, they're like kidnapping people or killing, taking the organs from prisoners or something. I mean, which would, given how big the U.S. prison system is, you can make a lot of money here. But yeah, well, again, that's from those Falun Gong, that crazy cult who has been, even the New York Times says basically that their leader is crazy.
Wait a second. Wait a second. Wait a second. Are you a New York Times worshiper? You think
No,
everything that
I
comes
gotta
out from them
subscribe. And that's
that's the
occasionally they're
source of
right.
all truth? Come on.
No, it's not the source, but again, the New
New
York
York
Times is not a
Times, they say
fan
whatever
of.
they want.
They're not a fan of the Chinese government. So if they're basically agreeing with them, then that tends to be, better chance of being right. And again, Dad, this is based on, people, and they're not the only crazy anti-communist cult that's out there. I mean, you can read up on the MEK guys, the Iranian, that are nutty Iranian cult that was working for Saddam, and works with, well, I don't know if still, but worked for the CIA, and conducted assassinations in Iran. And they have they're run by the wife of their founder, who's does all these cultish things like tell the members of the cult that they can't have sex because that's going to bring that's going to increase their power or something. They control who gets married to who. I mean, it's
Oh, absolutely.
but Falun Gong is, and Falun Gong, they had that huge scandal with the Epic Times, where it turns out basically they were engaged in the internet fraud to fund their newspaper, the Epic Times. That the guy was their chief financial officer, was running all these Bitcoin schemes, and essentially forget all the details, but it was basically just running a bunch of scams in order to fund their anti-China. You used to get it in. I think they used to send it out in the mail, right? Because people were wondering how the hell can they afford to do this? But again, apparently it was because they're conducting this huge money laundering scheme essentially.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah. But
I understand. Well, so far what you said, I haven't heard that, but you said one guy was doing something.
some people well, and again, I've run into one or two.
No, I'm sure you could take
Long
any
story.
you could take any
We
society.
have because we have at NIMAS, we have a good friend, Ed Chen, who's Chinese, and he's had run-ins with Taiwanese American.
He's had run-ins with Taiwanese or Epic
With
Time,
the Falun Gong cult.
the Falun
And he
Gong.
always told us stay away from them. They're you don't want to get involved with them. Basically, they're nuts.
They're
So,
nuts.
you knew this. This is we're talking 8 years ago.
I've heard that kind of stuff too. I've heard criticisms of the Falun Gong.
No, again, you were in Scientology, so you know how cults
There's
operate.
there's certain aspects of Falun Gong that are similar to Scientology. But I'm not.
Right, yeah. I mean, they tell their people, you don't need to get medication or go see a doctor because our magical leader.
Cut it out. Cut it out. Cut it out. Cut it out. That's just rumors. Cut it out.
Wait.
Stop it. I don't want to spend time trying to correct that.
No, that's. I mean,
It's absolute.
If it's
The
rumors,
Times
it's been
said
confirmed
so.
by
The New York
people
Times.
that.
The New York Times told me so. I understand. You got the word from the New York Times. Thank you. I don't want to spend time correcting that. It's just a misunderstanding you have.
Look,
I wonder if
it's
they're
not just the New York Times.
yeah, not just the New York Times. There's 3 other newspapers. That's fine. Don't ask somebody who is there. Just take what the newspaper report.
And we can spend. But let's go on to the other.
I don't want to talk about that. Hiya, Mike. I want to ask Mike a question.
The one about immigration.
Hold it.
Yeah, I'm
Before you
going to
go-
go to that in a second. But there was a point here. I just want to get Mike's viewpoint on it. We
Well, before we go
we
on-
had a disagreement here on.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Did Joe Beverly get on?
Who?
Joe Beverly. If you don't know, you met him at the
Oh.
diner. If
We
you don't know,
thought Jim was trying to get on.
Jim was trying to get on, and maybe I didn't push the right button. I'll give him a call.
And I've been waiting to get on for about 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, I
So-
didn't hit the admit thing, I think. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna call Jim and ask him to try once more.
Well, while you're doing that, why don't you ask me a question so I can fill the dead air?
Yes, thank you. It was just we were chatting about, we played a thing. This guy was saying, don't worry about China because we worried about Japan in the 90s and nothing came of it. So the same thing could happen with China. I mean, we got to keep our eye on them, but don't lose sleep. Just pay attention. But we're not necessarily going to go to war with them. And he's that kind of a guy. No,
Yeah.
like a Woody Allen character in a movie. Well, I don't have time to worry about that, so I got to do this. He's very like that. But in any event, we have a conversation talking about what he was saying, and the question was that's coming up here is, do you think? Oh, it was organ harvesting. Like, in other words, the West has disgraceful behavior, and China has every country has some kind of disgraceful behavior you could point out. So Alex is saying the concept that China is harvesting organs from prisoners or Falun Gong people is just a myth created by the Falun Gong to attack China. And I wondered what your viewpoint was on that. And now I'll call Jim.
Okay. Well, first of all, I have to wonder, my question would be, are we going to war with China over organ harvesting?
No.
The two. My feeling about that is, since I haven't heard that much about it, is that if there's evidence that there's organ harvesting, then there's evidence. But if there's no evidence, I mean, if people are saying it, then yeah, you can investigate it. I personally have not heard any hard evidence that China's doing organ harvesting. I mean, that is pretty morbid. But I don't know. I don't see. I mean, who would they be doing organ harvesting with?
Guys, I tried to get on earlier.
Yeah, try it again. Maybe I might have made a mistake. Try it again.
All right,
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, who?
There's the Falun Gong has a show called Epic Times, and they
Yeah. The Falun Gong,
And I
don't
I was telling Ken
wait, Alex,
about
let me,
the run-in.
Alex, hold it. Let me make my comment, then you can add on to that.
Yeah.
I was saying I wouldn't put too much credence on what the Falun Gong says or Epic Times. Now you can go on and add on.
No, I was just saying, how again, our friend Ed Chen warned us about them in the
Yeah.
past. We had that. I mean, I specifically thought, we had the run-ins with them for, again, when we went out to Massachusetts for the military. I remember they tried to talk to Chen and to Ed. I remember that about Taiwan or something. Remember?
Yeah.
You were there, I think.
Yeah, they're a little off the wall, I think. But so I mean, they can talk about organ harvesting and they can watch the movie Coma, which is about organ harvesting. But personally, again, I'll wait till I hear the evidence. Thank you very much. I don't. I mean, there's a lot of things that, put it this way, it doesn't sound that believable to me. Now, whether or not if somebody dies of natural causes and donates their body to science or whatever, and they and somebody uses the organs, would that be considered organ harvesting? Because if that's the case, everybody.
I think if money changes hands, then that's
You mean somebody is selling their organs for money?
Or after your donation, they're selling it. I think it's more that's the implication, I think.
So the accusations are that they arrest people for political reasons. They're prison. What do they call that? Prisoners of conscience.
Yeah.
Conscience. And then you know, take advantage of him. They take out a kidney, or he happens to die, and then they take out a lung or something. You know, there's a lot of harvesting you could do without killing a person.
In many countries, if you're a prison, if you've committed a crime, now
Yeah.
of course, this, you know, it depends upon what's considered a crime in that country.
Right.
They can, in many countries, I've heard at least, that they can use your organs for science, you know, or they can use it for donations or something like that. But as far as them taking out the organ of political prisoners and then selling it, I mean, how would they market that? Hey, we've got an organ of a dissident here. If you want that, if you want a piece of that dissident in your body, we've got it for you. I don't. I mean, is there a black market or excuse me, a market coming from China on organs?
I don't know about from China, but from some countries, I mean, for
Yeah.
I mean, Kosovo had that reputation actually for
Well, whatever. That's
still does.
again the reputation. Again, I'd like to hear more, you know, more hard evidence, but I haven't heard that China. Now, I haven't heard it, so I'm open to discussion, but I haven't heard that China is selling organs.
Okay, so let me.
Is Jim going to come on, or what did he say?
I don't know. He hasn't shown up yet.
It seems a
I
little.
asked him to come back. He's not coming back yet. Maybe he went to the bathroom. But anyhow, I immediately
Let's
got
play
a
the
thing.
play the other thing.
Okay, so
Talk about immigration, and you can defend Trump.
okay, I'm just going to show you this one thing, then I'll play that other video. Here we go. Let me go with this documents,
We're not.
screens. Where's that screen? I just put it up there. I guess this is it. Here, take a look, see what this says. You see this?
Yeah.
1.5 million people in China are in need of organ
Well,
transplant.
there are 1 billion plus.
1.5 million people in China because they got 1.5 billion people. So that's one person out of 1,000 needs an organ.
Yeah.
The organ donation volunteers are there in China. There are more than 1.77 million people have been registered as organ donation volunteers as of Friday. So there's a big thing going on there. And they have how many hospitals can perform organ transplants? 180 hospitals in China.
That doesn't sound like
organ donation in China, the major progress and the continue. So it's, you know, I don't know, maybe that because they're doing a lot of voluntary, legitimate organ transplants that people taken advantage of that and said, killed for organs, China's secret state transplant business. So that's it. There it is. Killed for organs, China's secret state plan. So it isn't just the Falun Gong. There's like, you know, there's an issue. And I'm not arguing about it or saying it's the end of the world. I'm just saying,
yeah,
you know, don't.
Wait a second, hold on. What was the website or the publication that said that had that headline "Killed for Organs"?
Oh, I don't know. Wait a second. Let me see. Well, I'll get it back. Let me go back to where is it? Is that it? No. Oh, geez. I'm terrible with this stuff. Oh, here we go. Kill for organs. Can you see this?
I'm trying to. I don't see "Killed for Organs."
Okay, let me get back.
There, yeah, and it just says YouTube NTD.
No, you got to be seeing this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what is NTD?
Yeah.
I'm looking for the word kill, right? Kill.
I mean, you know,
Kill for organs, transplant business.
Yeah,
okay. So who said this?
Know who that is.
Let's see. It's a YouTube video. Let me kill the sound because they're going to give a whole thing. It's NTD.
Probably some NTD, some media.
NTD, whatever this is.
Oh,
And it's probably the Falun Gong.
yeah.
But there's, they got senators and people looking and here, and there's something going on,
Yeah, I
and
think I'm at ntd.com and it's all, well, it
It's
looks very
all-
pro-Trump, so that's probably is, yeah.
yeah. So, okay, but it's,
And they're oh yeah, they think Trump is, gonna save the world, literally.
organ transplant, organs on demand, China's transplant industry. So it's, maybe it's a big canard, like you're saying, it's false, but
Again, it's biased.
it's sort of like, or are there rings of pedophile? I mean, about every 3 months, you get a news story that FBI has rounded up 70 people involved in a pedophile ring in the US, or in Europe. Is that true?
There have been.
Every 3 months they get another 70 people. There's supposedly a lot of underground prostitution with children under 14,
What was that company that was at NDP? You said
NTD.
NT Nancy Tom David NTD.
And I think I found there it's like ntd.com and it looks, again, Falun Gong is very pro-Trump because they literally believe he's like a,
it's New Tang Dynasty.
So I think the website looked very pro-Trump. So I think that's.
Hold it. I've got it here on Wikipedia. New Tang Dynasty Television.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's definitely I've heard. Yeah, they're definitely Falun Gong.
Yeah, it says a multilingual American television broadcaster founded by adherents of the Falun Gong. Okay, so this is what's known as bombing into your own smoke. We found two different sources and it's the same source.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, Ken, let's move on to.
Okay, so now we're gonna move on.
Immigration and Trump. So
yeah, let me get to this other video, and I'm gonna get that and do it, and gonna give me a moment to get it. I'll keep losing it. There we go. It's gonna be on this page. Trump, school, children. No, okay. So let me close that and see if it's here. I got it. Okie doke. So I'm going to share. This is the one with our secret love affair with portion of the screen with the beautiful, resilient, reliable Amy Goodman. Here she is again. And let's see what she's got to say.
Yeah, bring the body.
And we're going to play it. Go, baby.
With Juan Gonzalez. Juan, there are a lot of challenges right now in this country, but you've been looking at the kind of successful organizing that's going on with immigrant groups on the ground. Talk about what you see there in Chicago.
Yeah, Amy, well, despite much media attention on the ramping up of mass deportations by the Trump administration, coverage, by the way, that the White House has aggressively orchestrated, the actual number of deportations during the first few weeks have hardly lived up to the hype. Homeland Security officials acknowledged yesterday that around 11,000 immigrants, supposedly folks who have committed crimes or undocumented have been arrested, an average of about 500 a day. And just half of those, according to the department's own statistics, are supposedly criminals. Others are what they call collateral arrests. At that rate, it would take about 6 years just to deport 1 million people, not 5, 6, 7, or 11, just 1 million people would take 6 years. So obviously the worst is yet to come if we're to believe that Trump is actually serious about these deporting millions and millions of people. But few people are focusing on the inevitable resistance that immigrant rights groups are certain to launch. As we used to say in the 1960s, wherever there is oppression, there is resistance. And immigration activists that I've talked to in recent days are right now in the midst of coordinating a string of mass mobilizations for this spring that they hope will go beyond the historic immigrant rights protests of 2006, when millions and millions of undocumented and their supporters turned out into the streets of all the major cities in the United States. They're calling on grassroots organizations to culminate those protests in early May, specifically on May 1st, International Workers' Day, with a series of labor strikes, not just one, but several days without immigrants, including a Cinco de Mayo walkouts from restaurants and hotels across the country to make clear how critical immigrants are to American capitalism. So it's obvious that the neo-fascist coup we are witnessing will not be defeated simply by legal challenges in the courts. It will have to be confronted in the streets, and I think that the immigrant rights groups are going to be setting the path for the level of militancy that will be needed.
Well, we're going to look right now at a victory for immigrant rights that came in a legal case on Sunday night. Around the same time, the musical legend Jon Batiste was singing the Star-Spangled Banner at the start of the Super Bowl, attended by President Trump, just days after Trump fired Batiste and others from serving on the board of the JFK Center for Performing Arts. On Sunday evening, our next guest found himself on a video conference with federal judge Kenneth Gonzalez in New Mexico, as the judge temporarily blocked the U.S. government from sending his clients, 3 Venezuelan men, to the U.S. Navy base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, where the Trump administration is preparing a 30,000-person detention center. Bahar Azmi is legal director of the Center for Constitutional Rights, which sought an emergency order to protect the 3 men who've been held for about a year at the Otero Detention Center for re-entering the United States. The men say they left Venezuela to request asylum in the U.S., but were rejected. When they saw others from the detention center transferred to Guantanamo, they feared they could be next and asked the judge to preemptively block their transfer. Over the weekend, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem visited Guantanamo days after the first detained immigrants were flown there. She claimed without evidence on CNN that the people deported there were dangerous criminals.
These individuals are the worst of the worst that we pulled off of our streets.
Who are they?
Murderers, rapists. So when I was there, I was able to watch one of the flights landing and them unload about 15 different of these criminals. Those were mainly child pedophiles, those that were out there trafficking children, trafficking drugs, and were pulled off of our streets and put at this facility.
This comes as the Trump administration recently withdrew temporary protected status for Venezuelans living here in the U.S. Bahar Azmi joins us now for more on this case filed with the American Civil Liberties Union of New Mexico, Las Americas Immigrant Advisory Center, his recent article for Slate. We'll talk about that in a minute. So Sunday night, or more than 100 million people are watching the Super Bowl, but you're on a conference call. How did this happen?
Once our clients had some credible information that they might be transferred to Guantanamo, after all, they fit the profile of Venezuelans in detention in New Mexico, we decided we had to move and prevent their transfer, their rendition to the lawless space in Guantanamo. And our team from CCR and Las Americas and ACLU of New Mexico worked around the clock and filed an emergency motion Sunday, maybe at 5. And as I don't remember who was playing, but within an hour, the judge asked for a conference call. Our team got on. He took it from the side of the road and agreed that there's too much of a risk to our ability to access our clients and to the court's jurisdiction to allow the government to transfer them. So he issued an order forbidding their transfer to Gitmo.
And could you talk about the challenges faced by immigration and human rights advocates in dealing with this Guantanamo situation, given the fact that there aren't even, you don't even have the names of the people who are being shipped there?
Yeah, thanks. Well, this is like a grim deja vu from 2001, early 2002, when the then lawless Guantanamo prison was populated by, as known, repurposed, the worst of the worst. That was what was said about the Muslim men and boys who were sent there. And then, as now, had no idea the identities of people there, their legal status, or at least the administration's position regarding their legal status. And then, as of now, Guantanamo just represents this security theater. It's a kind of performative cruelty that, stamps people simply by virtue of their placement there as dangerous. It's an utterly manufactured kind of performance to show muscularity through vengeance.
In addition to Bahar Azmi, legal director for the Center for Constitutional Rights, we're joined by Vince Warren, executive director of CCR. And Vince, I wanted to ask you about the constitutional crisis that is looming in this country. Many of Trump's executive orders have already been temporarily halted. Already a judge has said he is not obeying his order to start the funds flowing at the Treasury that have been approved by Congress. Yet you have Vice President J.D. Vance writing on X, that's the richest man in the world's platform, Elon Musk's platform. Vice President J.D. Vance said judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. Your response?
That is 100% not true. And we've been actually talking for many years about when does a constitutional crisis present itself. And I'm here to say that this is the moment. The question that we're all facing is that when courts issue legitimate orders to get the government to do things that it should do, or to stop doing things that it shouldn't do, or to comply with the law, and the administration says, yeah, we don't really have to comply with that. That's the definition of a constitutional crisis. And we're seeing that in that possibility in just about everything. In terms of the temporary restraining order that we got in Guantanamo, what's the guarantee that they're going to show up to court and with an adverse ruling stop transferring people? What's the guarantee that they're going to release the funds that courts order them to do? There is no guarantee, precisely because this administration has been built on lies and the idea that it is actually that the law just doesn't apply to them. What applies to them are their political points. So we have a administration that is really moving to seize seize the pillars of our constitutional system and our laws and to rip them to shreds, not only just to test them, but to just destroy them. We are actually facing a constitutional crisis on a range of issues, and it's just not clear to any of us whether this administration will actually comply with the rule of law in any context.
And Vince, this use of Guantanamo Bay, not simply to as a detention center for or as a black hole prison for suspected terrorists, but Guantanamo was used even before that to house thousands of Haitians and Cubans who were trying to get to migrate into the United States. And interestingly, Rudy Giuliani was back then, before he was even mayor of New York, he was in the Justice Department involved in those. Are there any legal lessons from that prior period of using Guantanamo as a detention center for migrants?
Yeah, I think there are political lessons, Juan, and there are legal lessons. The political lesson is that for 40 years, dating back to the early 1990s, the United States government has used Guantanamo as a legal dumping ground for its political problems. Back then with the Haitians, you will recall that Haitians were sent there for suspected of having HIV and AIDS. And that was a health security crisis that the government said needed to happen. The Center for Constitutional Rights, Yale Law School, Harold Koh, Michael Ratner successfully sued and got Haitian migrants released on that boundary, only to go maybe 10, 12 years later, and they're opening Guantanamo now, the military side, for Guantanamo detainees. The story of the work that the Center for Constitutional Rights and Bahar Azmi is stuff of legend now. There are only 15 people left, but we were able to show, number one, that the people that were then described as the worst of the worst were not in fact so. There are only 15 men left in Guantanamo now, and as we are trying to make good on the failed promise of Barack Obama and Joe Biden to close that terrible facility, here comes Donald Trump, who now wants to open it up for yet another purpose. And he's using national security and the quote unquote invasion of migrants as the emergency to reopen that base and to house people there for that purpose. I would say one thing that legally that we know that I think is significant here is that Trump himself has said that the reason why he's opening it up is because he doesn't trust the governments to take these people back. And if they take them back, that they're just going to re-release them. So that speaks to me of an indefinite detention regime, which is really, really problematic. The issue that we've been dealing with in Guantanamo, Kristi Noem, when she talked about it, as we just saw, she made no promises or guarantees as to what would happen. She largely said, well, it really depends on what Trump wants to do. That's how we're going to roll. There are potential violations of due process, the rights that these men have in this context, and we have not yet seen a situation where people are put in Guantanamo coming from the United States.
Before we go, Vince Warren, I want to ask you about Trump and the ICC. He's issued sanctions on the International Criminal Court over its investigations of Israeli officials for war crimes in Gaza. The chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, is their first target after arrest warrants were issued for Prime Minister Netanyahu and the former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Can you lay out what you're calling this direct attack on the rule of law?
Absolutely. The Trump administration is saying once and for all, without any doubt, that they are siding with war criminals as opposed to the victims of war crimes. This is not a position that the United States should take, obviously, but I think what's more troubling is it's reopening the executive order that he had done previously, but it's now done in the context specifically of Israel and the United States. The executive order says specifically that because of what the ICC has done with respect to Netanyahu and Gallant, and because the U.S. has been targeted in ICC investigations, therefore the court is illegitimate. This is clearly an attempt to step away from the rule of law for the United States, and more importantly, to shield from any kind of liability or accountability people who are committing war crimes just because they're not signatories to the ICC. And we also know that the reason why they're not signatories to the ICC, because this is exactly the type of things that they were afraid of to begin with. So we're living outside of the law domestically. We're living outside of the law in terms of international human rights. And in every instance, it feels to me that we are siding for the unbridled power of the U.S. and Israel to do whatever the hell that they want, and that there's no court, this administration is saying, that can stop them.
Well, I want to thank you both for being with us. Vince Warren, Executive Director, Bahar Azmi, the Legal Director of the Center for Constitutional Rights.
Okay, so, got it. And here's Jim. We made it in. I think that was
Can I make a comment on just a point of information here?
Go ahead, make a comment.
There's a difference between the United States not participating in the International Criminal Court, whether you agree with it or not, and with the administration and the United States not participating, we didn't participate in the League of Nations. We know what happened there with that, but that's outside of the United States, that's an external issue, and then the United States government not complying with its own constitution. The danger in the former internationally, it would have to do with U.S. international relations, but the danger of the latter issue, which not obeying its own constitution, could lead to the destruction of the United States itself. So it's two. Even though they may seem very similar, it's actually two different issues leading to two different conclusions. I mean, one eventual conclusion perhaps, but two different conclusions in at least the short term. So I just want to make that point. Amy Goodman sometimes doesn't make those points. And I'm not, and when I made this point, it's not saying one side is right, one side is wrong. It's just two different issues. Go on.
Well, I have a question. Several people, I keep hearing them say ICC. When I looked it up, it's ICJ. It's International Court of Justice.
No. ICC is right.
What does that
The
stand for?
International Criminal Court, they issue warrants against specific people, which they have against Netanyahu and
Okay, so it's International
and the
Criminal Court.
Defense Minister Galan. So the
Oh,
ICJ, in which the U.S. is a part of, and actually, again, they have a judge. There's a American judge that's part of it, and was like the chairman of it when they had the whole case. ICJ decides international disputes between countries. ICC issues warrants against individuals for infringing on international law.
International Court of Criminal Justice?
It's
no, International Criminal Court.
International. No, it's just International Court of Justice. It's International Court of Justice. And I think.
No, but the other one, the ICC is International Criminal Court.
International Criminal Court, I think, is the full. Yeah.
Can I have a question? Did the ICC issue warrants for or arrest warrants for the leaders of Hamas?
Yeah. No, they issued warrants for Sinwar, who's obviously dead, and the other guy who's dead, Mohammed Dave. So
Okay.
actually, there are no. But again, they haven't issued. They haven't issued any other warrants since the previous one. So.
Right. Okay.
There's nobody by Hamas. Again, the two people in Hamas that they issued warrants against were killed and have been admitted to have been killed. Well, again, we have one on being killed on video. So, and the other one, both sides have said Israel and Hamas have said he's dead. So, yeah.
So, but basically, yeah, and they could possibly issue warrants.
Right. Again, they could issue warrants against.
This is Democracy Now! Democracy Now!
Yeah, they could issue war. Again, there's obviously the current Israeli defense minister, but again, the current leaders of Hamas, they could. And they, I think they at some point they issued a warrant for the political head of Hamas, the one Israel assassinated in Iran. So again, like I said, right, but obviously the current Israeli defense.
They could issue warrants against against the Hamas leaders as they come up. Also, have they ever issued warrants? And this is just out of curiosity, against anybody from Iran?
No, because there's never been a case against Iran. Again, they don't. The ICC doesn't put out case on like terrorism or something, so that it has to be something much more, war crimes, something like it has to be something much more serious than than an individual terrorist attack or something.
And what about?
And they don't. Unless it rises to the level of like genocide, they don't do like if there's like internal repression, they don't. So
and they don't.
It's never been.
So they wouldn't deal with like racist attacks
unless it it'd have to reach some level of crimes against humanity or genocide or something like that for the ICC to take it up. Yeah.
Right. So actually, we need. It seems to me we need not less of a international criminal court, but more of one that would. But then again, it could be politicized, etc. But
it always is. So.
Yeah, it always is, and
which is again the nickname for the court is because they have almost only indicted African leaders. It's the international. They call it. A lot of people call it the International Caucasian Court because again, except for like Milosevic and obviously Netanyahu now and Putin, they have never indicted a white political leader. It's most of the people they prosecute at the ICC have been Africans.
So basically,
Jim.
Well. First of all, the ICJ is an arm of the United Nations.
Yeah,
it's an organ of the United Nations. It's separate and distinct. By the way, I was there. You were up in the front. I just had to leave early.
Oh.
So it was actually pretty heavy film. It was actually depressing to watch in the midst of all the shit we're going through. But the ICJ is different. It's again an organ of the United Nations.
Yeah.
The panel. I've been to both of them actually. I've been to The Hague. I went to the ICJ when they were trying Yugoslavian Serbian war criminals, and the ICC, that's a creation of the Rome Statute. And so what's different about that is that it is definitely its jurisdiction is to prosecute individuals for crimes of genocide against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression. Now, I don't really, like the African countries getting pissed off over their people being tried. I really don't give a shit about them because the ICT, which dealt with Yugoslavia, okay, that's white people being, quote, indicted for war crimes, and deservedly so. And the case of Rwanda, that was Africans being committed for their genocide against fellow Africans. And then what they got angry about was there were so many egregious examples of that they got angry that it was essentially going after one war criminal in Africa after the next, like the guy who was in charge of the rebel movement in Uganda, Joseph Kony. They were just doing all sorts of brutal things, and they deserved to be indicted for war crimes. They were going after Omar al-Bashir of Sudan, another war criminal. They went after Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya. They went after, now people can argue about Gaddafi. I personally didn't think he was an angel. They went after Laurent Gbagbo of Ivory Coast, of Cote d'Ivoire, and they went after Jean-Pierre Bamba of the DRC. Now, these are guys who deserved their attention. We can argue about them going after non Africans, which they were getting very angry because it actually caused a big internal and interstate battle within Africa itself, because all these countries were and then of course Mugabe was one who was always angry because they're going after me, but and again he deserved every bit he got. And then when they issued the arrest warrants for Putin in 2023. And they went after that person who was abducting children. The woman the person, Maria Lvova-Belova, who was essentially sanctioning the stripping and sending of kids in the occupied areas that the Russians had in the Donbass. So they deserved everything they got, as far as I'm concerned. And again, you could argue, okay, they did an equal opportunity hit, which is what got the United States angry, because not only they go after Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, they go after Sinwar, who's dead, Hania, who's dead. He got killed in Tehran, and then Mohammad Hadif, who got killed in the fighting. But and then I think they also have requests to go after the Taliban leader. But I'm in favor of the ICC. The United States, of course, did not sign it. So because they didn't sign it precisely because of these kind of questions. They were very upfront about it. They didn't want to be part of it because it would hinder the ability of the United States to operate. And we can see it right now because Netanyahu. I mean, remember they arrested Pinochet. I forget how they arrested Pinochet, but he had
a Spanish, when he was in Britain for like an operation, a Spanish judge issued a warrant.
Spanish judge issued that. Okay.
Warrant that.
All right.
Yeah, on the basis of the Rome Statute.
Right. And you've got, it's and I would watch those hearings that occurred regarding Israel because they were interesting. I mean, again, you could, they were making a solid case. Now, my problem, of course, is that October 7th is not exactly a lark in kindergarten, and everybody ignores that. But on the other hand, you get in this question of proportionality, and that's legitimate. And again, what happened yesterday, I think, Michael, you came on a little late, but Lenny brought up a pretty good point. I've never, ever seen any American solution to the Middle East crisis arguing to forcibly relocate 2.2 million people from Gaza. It is absolutely outrageous. And it's the one thing I said, Jesus Christ. I mean, I've been sort of careful about my willingness to join, some of these kids who are just, as far as I'm concerned, Again, I understand why they're raising hell. I understand all that, but this is absolutely beyond the pale. To even think the United States would do something like that is forget it. It's absolutely something that has to be opposed. It's essentially the United States aligning directly with the 21st century Nakba, whether you like it or not. That's the fact of it. And so, and we would deservedly to be indicted at the ICC. I mean, Trump would be putting the United States in further jeopardy by doing some stupid shit like that. And who the fuck knows what he's going to do on Saturday? How's he going to back up his threats? He's playing chicken. He's going to be pushed against the wall. What are they going to do if Hamas says, gives him the finger?
Well, actually, first of all, Jim, I have to say a point of information. I did not get on late last night. I didn't get on at all. So,
yeah, he wasn't there.
All right. Michael, you weren't there. Well, anyway, Lenny made a good point. Okay, Lenny made a good point. He basically said it's true. It's just absolutely ridiculous. No one's ever made that kind of argument for American foreign policy to align itself with something like that. We've always been careful to distance ourselves from that, even in the 6-Day War. And now Trump wants to openly align ourselves with that. Forget it.
But my question is,
I don't want to hear people about anti-Semitism on this one. Forget it. It's totally outrageous.
Does any of this surprise you? I mean, did anybody think that Trump was going to come up with a rational, measured plan for the Middle East? I mean, I just heard it, and I said, this is typical Trump craziness. And people were saying, I know people were saying, he's just doing that so that, he's getting them to negotiate to a better position. But he just doubled down on it. And by the way, originally he said it doesn't compare to what the Palestinians called the Nakba in 1948. And I'll tell you why. Originally it did because he said they're only going to be able to leave willingly. Now, according at least from the Israeli side, in 1948, most the overwhelming majority of people left on their own because they were frightened into doing it, or they didn't want to live in Israel, whatever your opinion as to what happened. This time, when he doubled down, he said they will not be allowed to return. He said they will be moved out and not be allowed to return.
Right.
And therefore, he not only doubled down, but he went further. And this is, you're right, it's craziness. And when he says there'll be all hell to pay, I imagine what he means, because I don't know. He can't, if he means he's going to put U.S. troops on the ground, I mean, then he's playing political games with himself. But I think, though, what he's talking about is, he may have already given the Israelis the bunker busting bombs, all they'll need or something. And what he's probably talking about is he's going to just tell Netanyahu, said, you can do whatever you want and we'll back you. Which is in essence the same thing. I mean, it doesn't matter which military comes in and demolishes Gaza, it still gets demolished. But we all know this plan is crazy, and also he's also admitted that he's looking at it from the point of view of a real estate mogul. That he's looking at it. He even said, "I will own Gaza. I will own." He didn't say, "I will own the Gaza issue."
No.
He said, "I will own Gaza," which means he may be talking about, this is a person who's sitting in the office of the president of the United States saying, hey, I can make some good money off of this.
Well, look, Michael, we know he's a big bullshit artist. So whether this is him, in a new level of artistry with his bullshit is an interesting question. Because if you think through it logically, all right, now you look at these documentaries where they show these people coming back and basically trying to live amidst their rubble. And, I don't agree. I mean, I've studied pretty carefully the first Arab-Israeli war. There's no doubt about it in my mind that, the question of, the evidence is overwhelming. Even in the Israeli official history, of the first Arab-Israeli war, they used military operations to force people to leave. And yes, indeed, people fled and all that, but military operations were used, and it's just. It's not even worth arguing about. It's just unfortunately that's what happened. Even Israeli historians argue this shit, and even conservative Israeli historians argue this. So yeah, you're gonna have this big fight about the Nakba. You're gonna have people. I'll never forget. I met this guy I know who was during the 6 Day War. He was, he didn't do his aliyah to Israel, but he was guarding a kibbutz or some shit like that. But he used to say to me, "Oh well, there were no Palestinians in 1914." I said, "What are you fucking stupid, man? I mean, what kind of stupid shit is that to say that there were no Palestinians? Most of the population were under the Ottoman vilayets, and the amount of Jews inside Israel in 1914 was actually quite insignificant, even though they had a couple of the first and second Aliyah came in. But it's still, I don't want to argue with dumb shit like that. It's absolutely ignorant stuff. And
see, but Jim, the point I was trying to make was this is worse. What he's proposing is worse than the quote unquote Nakba.
Well, yes, but it's unfortunately associating American power with, I mean, again, is this just him, saying some stupid shit like, "Oh, you want to buy the building for like $50 million? Well, I'm not going to, I'll only sell it for $200 million. I mean, who knows if it's that kind of stuff. But nevertheless, this is not the kind of issue to play games with like that. And I don't know what kind of advice he's getting from some of these people, because supposedly all bets are off. He's fired the National Security Council professional staff. He told them to go home. So he has all these sycophants in there. And Marco Rubio is, I mean, again, what kind of sober counter opinion is he being given to these initiatives he did? I'm pretty sure he was given sober counter opinion to putting the tariffs in, but then he decided to put a tariffs in anyway.
Yeah. Well,
and objectively speaking, it actually is going to hurt him already. Already, they're reporting inflation went up in the grocery stores in January. So much for all the nonsense about it's the economy stupid on his part. So I really don't know what, and this could be a negative thing for all of us in this country if he decides to do something nuts on Saturday. I mean, I guess he thinks that they're going to I can't see Hamas, as rigid as they are, bending to him. That's the problem I have with this. And these poor guys who are hostages, they're going to be the ones who suffer. Again, and the other people who suffer will be the Palestinians, who then get caught in the crossfire of renewed warfare. It's just a pathetic thing.
That, I heard.
How many? Wait, let me intercede to one question. How many hostages are still being held by Hamas?
We don't know. I think there's about 30 or 40, but a lot of them are dead.
Yeah, how many do you think are still alive?
Well, that's a good question, because you look at these three guys that they released. The men were clearly, and then you get into these arguments with people on the left. I mean, I don't want to argue with somebody about the issue of rape or not. I mean, yeah, sure, maybe, it's like, I was looking at a website which was showing the actual dead in that festival on October 7th. I mean, I don't want to, you want to defend that, fine, cool, right on. Cool. I don't want to argue that with somebody, I just want, it's just, and then the rape thing that happens in war. Okay. And for somebody then to say that Palestinians can't be just as dehumanized as Americans can be, or anybody who fought in any kind of war, is ridiculous. Of course they're going to rape women. What is the big profound discovery about that shit? But then you get into these problems with these arguments with these people. Oh, they never did that. It's all a Zionist lie. Oh, come on, give me a break. So anyway, it's a real awful situation. And you look at and Alex and I saw. I don't know if you talked about that movie. That was quite intense.
No, but we can. Yeah.
That was quite intense. But
I told Ken a little bit about it.
Anyway,
I mentioned I didn't see you, so I thought you didn't make it.
Well, there's one other point I wanted to bring up, because I've heard it from a couple of other people. Well, first of all, two other points. One, I mean, obviously, Hamas overplayed its hand by saying they're not going to release the hostages on Saturday because they don't like this thing that's being done or that thing that's being done. They don't have as much, obviously, they have more leverage than they do. Once Israel decides that those hostages are dead, are probably dead, or will be dead by the time they're released, if there are these delays, then there's going to be nothing to stop them from going all out.
Good point. Good point.
And the other point is, one thing that people are a little uncomfortable with is that when you talk about moving out population, forced relocation. Okay, now first they said it was going to be voluntary. It's not going to be voluntary. When you're talking about forced relocations, a lot of people, and I'm sure people in Israel are feeling this also, it's reminiscent not of 1948, but of the 1930s in Germany, which was used on Jews. And there are people in Israel today that are rather sensitive to that. And I can't see where that doesn't make people feel uncomfortable. Even
only if he used trains. If he used trains, everybody's going to get upset.
Okay, so if you take them out with 40 people in a car, it's okay.
No, a donkey cart, or in a Tesla.
Yeah. Then you can go back to the Armenians. It's just, and I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen a poll or anything on how popular this idea is with Israel. We've only heard from the loudmouths on the Israeli far right. I mean, we haven't heard. Oh no, we did hear from one or two Israeli, kind of closer to centrist. They're on the just right of center, who are saying no. I mean, who is it that said that nobody should be forced to leave Gaza? There shouldn't be a forced relocation. So already there's a lot of discomfort there. There's a lot of unease. But Trump is just going to shoot his mouth off. He's going to say he's going to take the most extreme position and then double down on it. Because normally when you take an extreme position, you're doing it as a negotiating tool. You say, okay, we'll back off from that if you back off from this other thing. But he isn't backing off. He doesn't know what there's no art of the deal with this schmuck. He doesn't know. He just takes the extreme position. And then if anything goes further with it, but never backs off. There's no negotiation. He says, no, I want I want everything. I want this extreme position. It is nuts. But the fact is, we're living. I mean, again, it's nuts what he's doing with the tariffs. Everything is nuts. The only way to get rid of this guy, I will put it this way, there's ways to get rid of him, but I don't want to discuss him. But the fact is, that's why I said, I was telling people up in Canada, I said, the way to deal with Trump and Elon Musk and these people is to hit him where it hurts. Go after their businesses, go after their money, go after their sources, personal, to make the issue personal.
Yeah, but he is going to tell the courts to go to hell.
He already is. He's
going to tell the legislative, already he doesn't have to worry about the Senate and the House. The only thing that'll probably get bollocksed up for him is when they have to pass a budget, and then when the Democrats cooperate with it, whether they force a shutdown or not. Interesting question, because he just went through that before the election last year. But he's going to force a constitutional crisis. I think some judge already has ruled that he can reduce the federal workforce. Now, there's going to be, he's obviously shopping around for the right federal judge to get a ruling in his favor. And all this is going to get argued about in the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court, as I argued yesterday, you get into this question of when John Marshall in 1832 ruled that the Cherokee removal was illegal. And again, supposedly...
Could you repeat that, please? What happened in
1832?
1832.
1832, Andrew Jackson
Yeah.
Was ruled against by the Supreme Court when he was ordering the Army to remove Cherokees. It was a famous case in Georgia. And what supposedly he said was John Marshall can do what he wants, but he has to enforce it. And that's going to be Trump's attitude. Where's your Army court justice? Who the marshals are going to sit there and enforce these things? He's going to do whatever he wants to do. And look at the speed he's doing this with Musk. I mean, they're obviously taking advantage of the fact that they have brilliant computer engineers and programmers who are helping them to break into the systems and do whatever the kind of things they want to do. I mean, it's like it's absolutely amazing what's going on, and people aren't going to put up with it if they start hitting Social Security and Medicare. Forget it. People will be out in the streets.
Right.
People will be out in the streets. There's no choice about this. And this situation with Gaza, this is something to me, I've refrained myself from joining those kids because I sort of felt like, some of it I felt like they were getting duped by Hamas, frankly. And I wasn't going to go and defend Hamas. But this is beyond the pale. What's going on right now is absolutely beyond the pale. To have our country associated with this kind of policy is, to me, just immoral, and it has to be opposed. It has to be.
But the key thing is, what do you
know where
have?
you stand? We know where you stand. That's your line.
When you have the problem is when you have a situation where the executive branch, which is supposed to enforce the laws, not only doesn't enforce them, but breaks them, and doesn't listen to the judges. There are no checks and balances. There are no guardrails. What do you have? I think that's called a dictatorship.
Absolutely. That's what it is. It's a dictatorship American style. And
that's what we have.
And it's well, this is where we're moving to. And it's clear. They've made it very clear that this is what they want to do. Hence, people are going to have to make their choices about, it can't be individual. It has to be a mass collective resistance to him. And one thing I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to go and look at the Congressional Quarterly because I want to see what races are up in 2026. I want to see what the actual lay of the land is for the Senate and the House. But the hell with it. I mean, I've even resigned myself that I might have to get arrested. Fuck it. I mean, I'm not. I have half a mind to go down in front of Trump Tower and provoke shit. I'm really pissed off about this stuff.
Well, I mean, that it may come to that, which means we may be heading towards.
It's come to that, man.
A revolution. But there's the problem that I have, and this is one of the things I wanted to bring up is that. And I was watching it. I wasn't even going to watch the Super Bowl because I didn't want to watch anything American. But I like football. So,
naughty.
That's why we got to get your ass north of the border, man.
Yeah, please get me there as a political refugee. But the fact is that I watched part of the Super Bowl, and I didn't see this, but I heard about Taylor Swift was booed or something. Trump was cheered, or they were talking about. And the fact is, I say to myself, the problem is, it's not necessarily a revolution we're moving toward. It's the civil war that the right wing has always been encouraging. Because there's too many people in this country who are just, and again, a lot of them have guns. They have illegal guns. The left of center has the illegal guns. But the idea is a lot of people in this country are just support this kind of thing. They would support dictatorship. There's a strong, and there always has been, as you know, Jim, a strong fascist trend in this country. It's never come to the fruition that it's come to now. I mean, countrywide, where the presidency is fully involved. Well, I don't even want to go that far, but the fact is, we've always had this fascist element. We've always had this racist element, and the fact is, we're now at a situation where we're not only dealing with a dictatorship, we're talking about a large element of the society which is fascist. So this is
well. There's no doubt. You look at the opinion polls. They have all these different. I mean, today I just had to listen to these LSB people, like people that Michael. A couple in Brooklyn Heights who sat there and defended Donald Trump right now. They're saying, "Oh, it's so good he's taking apart the deep state."
Yeah.
And they're saying, "Oh, Pacifica used to attack the deep state." Well, I don't understand why you guys are attacking Donald Trump, because he's taking the part of the deep state. And I'm saying to myself, like, what kind of stupid shit is this? He's basically out to replace the quote deep state with a bunch of lackeys that are in his camp. It's ridiculous. It's like, come on. And I mean, I didn't want to really get into an argument with Michael and Carolyn about this, but I said, Jesus Christ, I mean, what kind of bullshit is this?
Michael Lou, Michael Novick?
No,
No,
not Michael.
no, a
Please.
friend of ours. Yeah,
Michael would be on the other side on this issue.
Yeah.
Michael's an ultra leftist. These people are supporters of Trump. But to me,
Allen? No.
What?
Well, but remember, these people that we're talking about were, and I know both you and I, Jim, know several of people like this who were, if not ultra leftist, at least decidedly leftist, but they bought into the thing about the deep state, and they wanted.
Well, they bought into the COVID bullshit.
And the COVID bullshit was really, I think, was the turning point.
Yeah, and to me, their anti-vaccination attitudes are retrograde in the extreme
and irrational.
Extreme. I mean, weren't they given polio shots when they were kids, as everybody else was in this country? I mean, and then how many? Like, I know people who died of COVID, so I actually find it insulting to listen to some of the bullshit these guys come out with. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, okay, fine. And they of course defended, good old heroin cocaine dealer, Mr. Robert Kennedy Jr. up there at Harvard. With his appointment to be in charge of our health thing. And like, what a bullshit artist he was in his hearing, boy. He was really skilled. I give him credit.
Well, something.
Say, what did you accuse him of doing? Being a drug addict or a drug dealer?
Drug dealer.
It's well known that when he was at Harvard, he was selling. In fact, his cousin wrote a scathing commentary about.
Yeah. But what are you accusing him of?
He was selling heroin. I mean, I don't give a shit. He was selling heroin and cocaine, big deal. But then he's going to sit there and he was like addicted. He's going through this whole big thing. I was addicted to heroin for 14 years. Well, if you got addicted to heroin, as far as I'm concerned, as a New Yorker, you're a stupid jerk. Okay. And I think of the friends of mine who got addicted to heroin, who died of their addiction to heroin. I don't want to hear it. Okay. I mean, my days of mollycoddling heroin addicts they disappeared in 1970. Okay. And
I don't think so.
Well,
they're not disappeared. They people who can't afford to buy.
Being sensitive to a heroin addict, that shit disappeared in 1970. After that, forget about it. Because you can't control guys like that. Forget about it.
There's another element though here, and because when we're talking about COVID,
but you're not saying there are heroin addicts now.
Yeah, but I'm just saying personally, me being
people who can't afford to pay for.
Well, yeah, no, I understand all that, and look, as far as I'm concerned, they should all. Gil Noble, once had a Like It Is episode where this idiot showed how the only way he can get off is to shoot the stuff into his scrotum. Okay? Yeah. I thought that was pretty effective to show the problems of being addicted to heroin. If the only way you can get off is to shoot up your balls, I mean, shit. So, I always felt that should be shown to kids to freak them the hell out.
Well, don't criticize it unless you tried it. Come on.
I did try it. It's to be avoided at 100% costs. It's too good a drug.
But before we get into heroin addiction, the idea is I wanted to jump back to what we were talking about and talk about this COVID thing, because I know a couple of people who had COVID before there was a vaccine, and they were hit pretty hard by COVID. And of course, there was the thing about long COVID. And once after they got hit by COVID, all of a sudden they started going into this anti-vax thing. It's not something they would have said beforehand. And at one point I had a conversation with them. They started talking about bots that were being put in the vaccine. And I said, what? Yeah, bots that can control your thinking And I mean, it was insane shit, like the stuff you would hear about the people who hear voices in their
Well,
teeth.
that's the 911 bullshit.
Right. But what they did is, so I finally said to one of them, I said, if they could do that, then why are you eating food? Because they could put it in your food. They could put it anywhere. And actually, one of them said, yeah, you know something, you're right.
Yeah.
They could do it anywhere. But I mean, this kind of irrational thought, a lot of it started with COVID. Now,
I got to ask you a question. I know.
I
know
think
the thing-
COVID might have caused a lot of it. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
which is
COVID.
easy to
I
know.
got a
They
question.
they were already predisposed to their conspiracy way of thinking.
Wait a second. Wait a second. What about the concept like Donald Trump is intending to break the law, not follow what the judge says, and so forth? He's a criminal. He's a fascist. He's a dictator. Okay. What about this? It seemed to me to be a conflict here or hypocrisy in sanctuary cities. They're saying, well, these people came over here. You're just saying they broke the law when they came over the border without coming through normal channels. They snuck in over the Rio Grande. That doesn't count. I'm going to protect them. You can't take them out of here because they're illegal aliens. In fact, you can't call them that. You got to call them undocumented fellows, the folks from below the border.
Point of information.
So do you see the inner peak? Because it's not one or two guys, it's at least 40 people who snuck in from Mexico, or maybe 40,000, or maybe 40 million. I don't know.
All right, look, man, you
But it's a bit hypocrisy to say we believe in law and order, and somebody who doesn't follow the law is destroying democracy.
Well, wait. So you live in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
You know, you live in a very, you know, a multicultural city like we do. All right.
Yep. It's class structure.
You grew up in New York, and I'm sure that when you grew up in New York, you were exposed to people who were here illegally. I was.
Yeah.
And you know, and I would say the vast majority of people that I was exposed to who were here illegally and undocumented, what were they here for? They were here to make money and work.
Okay, so you
weren't here for anything else.
They
weren't here for anything else. And then, of course, if you had family come in from other parts of the world, let's say
I understand your motivation.
How were Jews treated when they came into the United States? Like shit. All right. And like, you know, so what gets me is that, and I can go into my background and point things out that they were treated badly. So what kills me is people can't remember in their own ethnic history how their distant relatives or compatriots of their distant relatives were subject to the same kind of bullshit behavior that's going on right now to these people.
Okay, so the crime is not accepting the illegal aliens. The people who come in without permission, it's a crime to reject them.
It's an economic necessity in our country.
No, fuck you. It's a crime to reject illegal
aliens. Bullshit.
Bullshit.
It's an economic, Michael, let me finish. It's an economic strength to our society
to have slaves
immigrants.
working for
No.
It's good to take illegal aliens and make them work below the minimum wage.
Yeah, well, how many guys do I know who acted like that, who came in illegally? Well, 2 or 3 or 4 years later, they weren't doing the minimum wage bullshit anymore. They had their own businesses. So again, I don't know what it's like in Los Angeles. I've never lived in Los Angeles.
Oh, so all illegal aliens grow up and all their kids go to Harvard. You know, you're picking and choosing. The question, the question is, does a country have a right to control its borders and decide who can come in and who doesn't?
Well, of course it does.
What standards?
Of course it does.
Does the country have a right?
But does this country have a right to then walk away from? We're already above 1.5 degrees in global temperature. They figured that would
be... No. Not changing the topic.
No, not changing the topic.
Changing the
why the hell do you think some of these people are here
away with that?
Bullshit.
Changing the topic.
Bullshit. I'm not
changing.
You're
going to go. Next thing you're going to talk about...
because some of these people...
HIV. Or
economies that have collapsed. Some of these people are coming from economies that have collapsed in part to global warming. So what are they supposed to do? Jump in the Pacific Ocean? They're supposed to go in the Atlantic Ocean?
What are they supposed to do? Come and live in your house?
Well, you know but what are they trying to do? They're trying to better their lives. I mean, what's wrong with that? That's why our families came to the United States.
Okay, then,
United States,
then what
United
you're
States when
saying
they
is
came,
it's a
the United States.
crime to reject an illegal alien. That's what you're saying.
I
think it's illegal.
I think it's
immoral
un-American.
to reject an illegal alien.
I think it's un-American. That's what
You
I
think
think.
it's immoral.
I think it's unpatriotic, frankly.
Okay, great.
Okay, that's what I think. And they want to wave their flags. They can stick it up their xenophobic assholes, as far as I'm.
So,
Ken.
okay, great. So not
Ken, wait.
accepting-
I'm
What
answering
about if
your
it's
point.
500,000
Ken.
Chinese people and they come in? You know how many Chinese people have come in?
That's all bullshit.
No, it's not.
500,000 Chinese people. What the? So they're fleeing from China. What?
Yeah,
I mean,
well, maybe
well,
they're not
these
fleeing.
idiots
Maybe they're
think
not
it's like
fleeing. Maybe they're
they
just
think
coming in.
oh yeah, well that's complete bullshit. They think that the PLA is infiltrating 500,000 people in our country. That is total bullshit.
Oh,
wait, hold on, Ken. You said that when the sanctuary cities, they were defying the law.
Let's
right?
get your wife in here. I want your wife.
Wait a second, hold on. If sanctuary cities are, in other words, they're defying the law, there's a difference between what they're doing and what Trump is doing.
Of course,
Trump
there's a difference.
is the one, yeah, a big difference.
But it's a hypocrisy to say,
No, it's
accept
not
this, but not
hypocrisy.
that.
No, Ken. It's not hypocrisy.
Why not?
Trump is the one who is supposed to be. He is supposed to be defending the federal law. So when a sanctuary city, a local, who are in charge of enforcing local law, runs again and says, we don't agree with the federal law. Yeah, you can argue, okay, but you're supposed to obey it, et cetera, et cetera. But Trump is not only supposed to obey it, he's supposed to enforce it. So he is using.
You don't see
wait.
You don't see the hypocrisy. Okay.
It's not hypocrisy.
Okay,
Trump,
I'm a hypocrite. And I think each person in this meeting is a hypocrite. If you
No,
want to admit that you're a
Ken,
hypocrite,
you're not getting my point because you're not listening to
No,
it.
you're just making a special case that's
No.
for
I'm
hatred.
talking about the fact that if the people who are supposed to enforce the laws, are not only in breaking them, they are not enforcing them, or they are enforcing the breaking of the law.
Yes.
The federal law. Sanctuary cities were local laws. This is people responsible for making local
What are you
or
talking
state
about?
laws.
What are you talking about?
You mentioned sanctuary cities.
What's the definition of a sanctuary city? We will not cooperate with the federal efforts to deport illegal aliens.
Right.
We will
Now
hide
they say,
them. We will.
but they are not the people responsible.
If they're elected
They are not
officials,
the
if they're
people
government
responsible.
officials, they're responsible.
No, they are not the people responsible for enforcing federal law. Okay, they are people who are
So
responsible.
they're allowed to cheat and break the law.
Now,
in other words, I can jaywalk because I'm not in charge of giving people tickets for jaywalking.
The idea is,
jaywalk.
You mentioned that. I'm not saying that it's totally right. I'm just saying that what Trump is doing, the Trump administration is doing, is a far more grievous wrong.
Okay, it's more grievous. Got it.
And what he's doing is he is the chief law enforcement officer of federal law. And he is not only not following federal law, but he is using his position as chief enforcement officer to actually oppose federal law.
What are you talking about? He's trying to round up the criminals and get them deported.
Oh, yeah. No, wait a second. Hold on.
That's the law.
Ken, no, that's not law. His responsibility is to enforce federal law. Federal judges have said that he is to stop what he's doing, and they are the ones who are...
Mike, look up the judges. The judges are all appointed by Democratic, not all.
It doesn't matter.
70% appointed by Democratic.
He had Reagan appointees disagreeing with him.
There were 3 appointed by Republicans. The other 7 were appointed by Democrats.
All right.
They're federal judges.
All right. First of all, look.
Why are they more
Wait.
significant?
All right. First of all.
You don't listen.
No, wait. First of
But
all,
you won't face it.
wait a
All I'm
second.
saying
You
is
don't
it's
listen.
hypocritical to accuse this guy's not following
We're
the law,
hypocritical?
but we cannot
No.
follow the law, but
Schmuck.
he can't.
Schmuck, it's not hypocritical if
It
you
is
oppose
hypocritical.
a federal law, if you
All
support a state one. Ken, you've
All
got
right.
to stop looking at this
right.
like a kindergarten book.
All right. First of all, the whole reason to have sanctuary. First of all, let's look at when the sanctuary city movement came into effect.
Okay, give me
Came
the
into effect,
explanation.
it came into effect in the 1980s when the United States was conducting basically covert wars in Central America, in El Salvador, Guatemala, and other places in the world. And there were refugees coming from those wars into the United States that were being denied asylum because they were politically on the wrong side. And so, in the case of El Salvador, the case of Guatemala, that's where the origins of sanctuary cities come from. In other words, people said, you know, these people coming illegally, fleeing because of our support for these regimes, and they're fleeing.
Everybody I've met and I've hired and worked for me who was came into the country illegally did it for economic reasons,
right?
Not for fear of political.
I'm talking about in the 80s when they set up the they set up the sanctuary cities because of that, and churches openly opposed U.S. foreign policy.
Right.
Okay.
There you go. Great.
So that's where you get. And then San Francisco was the first city that established a sanctuary city.
Okay, great. And that was a noble gesture. And so what Trump is doing is a noble gesture to
you
the problem.
You.
It's a noble gesture.
What's noble about it? Noble. What's noble about it? Arresting, taking kids' family. I mean, first of all, what's noble about it?
Indulging in his racism.
Violin. Will you cut it out?
Look, remember when he came down the escalator.
Yeah. That was the end of the world.
All that bullshit about, they send us this, they send us that, they send us the rapists, they send us the criminals. I mean, he knows. And my favorite quote of Trump is like, you know why I'm a Republican? Because Republicans are stupid. They're easily manipulated. Of course, he's right. They are fucking stupid compared to others who aren't going to put up with his bullshit.
Okay. So guys don't see any hypocrisy. Nobody does. I know Mike doesn't. He doesn't consider it hypocritical. You agree?
No,
Jim?
It's two different issues.
It's completely different.
I didn't. Nothing is completely different, and nothing is completely the same.
That's correct. There could be a similarity.
There are similarities, but they're different issues. And what Trump is doing is to me, he is breaking the laws that he is supposed to be enforcing, which is just federal law. He isn't responsible for enforcing state and local laws. And state and local officials aren't responsible for enforcing federal laws. That's why state officials or local officials call in the FBI, call in the DEA when they have something that's federal. Why do you think these organizations have to work together on certain cases?
No, these are federal judges.
That's right. Federal judges told Trump to stop what he's doing, and he's not stopping what he's doing.
Yeah.
So he's breaking the laws he is supposed to be enforcing.
Well, he has not yet. I don't think he's yet refused or went against the court order. I don't think so.
Well, actually, he did indeed. First of all, this is what happened in the first administration. He used the DOJ to sue California. You were living in California in 2018. And he was suing them because he felt that the laws that they had implemented in the state were unconstitutional. And he asked them to be blocked. And he's going to do the same thing now, except at this point, he's just simply ignoring it. He's not even bothering with the formalities of going to court on this. He's getting challenged in court, but he's just skipping go and going right to just deport him. But there were indeed lawsuits that basically overturned his decisions, and that's why.
No, no, the lawsuits when? Now?
No, back when he was president, the first.
Okay, so there were lawsuits that overturned decisions he made.
That's right, and it was, and in Seattle, they like to go to Seattle because it's a liberal. I guess it's a liberal federal court, but they overturned one of his injunctions against. They ordered. It was a nationwide injunction that was issued in 2019, essentially reinforcing Trump, and federal judges in appellate court threw that out, and that was when he was still president. That's before 2020. So there's been pushback at the federal level. And then what about those, how many millions of kids are in the DACA category where he wants to essentially knock out the 14th Amendment, which is, I mean, what kind of it's un-American. We fought a civil war to end slavery, and the 14th Amendment is a product of the Civil War. Now he's probably going to try, he may get at the Supreme Court, given the fact there are 6 conservatives there, he may get a ruling that interprets the 14th Amendment in terms of this new situation favorably to him. So it could be a situation where he will then try to strip, the whole question of having birthright citizenship. He may succeed. You never. But again, that flies against 100 years of legal practice.
Yeah, but that's a very good point. It's 100 years since the 14th Amendment, or close to it. Okay? Times have changed. The world isn't the same.
You're right, Ken. And you know what? It's 250 years since the United States was formed. Times were changed.
Things
so let's
change.
get rid of it. Then we should get rid of the United States. And don't worry about it. If you want to get rid of the United States of America, don't worry. You're getting a lot of support from the presidency.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, and that was another thing. You're accusing somebody of the right is the one who wants to have a civil war. Most of the guys I know who are part of a communist party are saying, no, no, it's got to be a violent revolution. Nothing happens unless blood will flow.
Well, they're idiots.
I know that's not everybody on the left. I'm not saying that. But the diehard commies are always like,
yeah, well, they're
a revolution.
Yeah, they're idiots. They have no guys like. Look, I've been around guys like that all my life.
Right.
And they have they're just in fantasy land. So I mean, they're idiots. But getting back to this issue of, part of the arguments that people make about this is that his use of the executive branch actually undermines federalism, because he forces cities and states who disagree with him to obey him, and he doesn't do that with authorization from Congress. Now, in the case of Congress, he has them bullied right now, and he may be able, but look at the majority. The margins are very thin in Congress.
Yeah.
And then they're not necessarily. I mean, you never know. He could actually pick up more seats in 2026. We never know. But he's certainly doing his best to make it easier for the Democrats. Now, the Democrats just got to get their shit together. They're like getting Chuck Schumer out there.
Well, yeah, I understand that. So forgetting about before you were talking about the actual impact, like what will happen if he sends in troops if they don't hand over the hostages? What will happen if he gets a program going of getting the Palestinians moved to Jordan or Egypt? What are going to be the real world consequences? Forget about the technicalities and what laws were followed or broken. So there's a question of that. That's really significant.
Well, he also has a limit as to how many people he can actually deport on a monthly basis. I think
too slow.
Calculation.
It's slow.
It was anyway from 10. Unless he expands the border police, the ICE, he's limited, and then he also has I think about 10,000 a month at the most, because he has quotas with all the 25 ICE centers, about 1,500 a week, I think, or something like that, some number which totals about 30,000 a month. But that's difficult to do because he's got these people. The ones who are most vulnerable are the people who have parole situations. But is it really legitimate some guy got caught for drunk driving and is on a parole because he's DUI.
I think the key
Why
thing,
should that guy? Why should that guy be treated the same way as a member of some ruthless El Salvadorian criminal gang? I don't.
right. Okay, the question is this. I think if he wants to get a flow of people, illegal aliens to leave, he's got to cut down the humanitarian benefits they're getting from being here. The free school, the free hospital, the free food, the free housing. He's got to cut it down.
Yeah, but
that's why they're coming and that's why they're staying.
Well,
and also he could cut down and say, no, you can't hire people that are illegal. They have to have a green card.
But yeah, but like look at what happens even in red states. He's got all these Republicans who want to have exceptions for agricultural workers,
right?
Because they need that workforce.
Yeah, that's what they say.
And that's certainly the case in California or any other state which has agricultural production as part of their ability to economically survive. In the case of Iowa, I mean, you see, I'll never forget, my mother took me into a factory that was filled with illegal, undocumented people. And from this point of view, in Hartford, Connecticut, a mushroom factory. And a mushroom factory smells like a big shit house. Okay. And they were all like, well trained. They're seasonal workers. They weren't protected by laws because they were under different kinds of rules to bring those workers in. The American economy is, a conservative Republican in who's dependent on that kind of labor is going to want that labor to come in.
Absolutely.
And that's that. And then, you look at these other guys, I mean, I just think that people have to, to me, it's again, it's just inhuman on the part of, I mean, America embraced and brought all sorts of people in from around the world, particularly from Europe, particularly from oppression. And for them to then send the signals to the rest of the world, we're just as bad as what you think we are. I mean, that I think is going to hurt us.
It's going to what?
By the way,
It's going to hurt us.
You did come up with a good idea. When I say came up with it, it's already been come up with. But you did mention a good idea. If unfortunately it's difficult to keep in place, but if all undocumented illegal people who are not permanent residents or citizens of the United States, if they all walked off their job at once, at the same time, and could maintain that for, I mean, one day is just going to be symbolic. But if you do it for 1 week or 2 weeks, and you see what businesses start, the businesses that start whining.
Mike, I don't think that kind of worker can afford to.
I know. Alex, actually, there has to be some sort of backup system to make sure that they get support, and that's the difficult.
Yeah, but that's the fantasy of the left of having a general strike. I mean, how many let's do a general strike?
It's a fantasy, yes, but it could. That is something that would work. But you're right. It's not. It's really not feasible because of the fact
trust
how
me,
these people are going to live.
If he starts messing with Social Security, all bets are off for the bastard.
Oh yeah, he's dead.
All bets are off. And you got and Medicare, all bets are off. Because he might want to fuck with Medicaid because they'll probably try to make this distinction, but even that's going to cause him problems because there's 70 million Americans who depend on Medicaid. Once he starts moving into that area, his ass is grass, and Trump is not stupid. He knows that he can't do that. That's a tough problem for him to do.
Well, there were 1 second. There's like the kind of a thing that Musk is doing. They're going to find egregious fraudulent activities. People will support that, especially the people on Medicare or Medicaid, because they need the legitimate money and they don't want somebody who's a welfare queen. When you go to the supermarket and you see a woman coming in with sables and jewels and she's giving them, I forget what it's called, coupons that they got from the government to pay for the food.
Food stamps,
yeah. It's very upsetting. That's for people who are in distress.
Yeah, but that's all bullshit. Come on, man. You got
there's lots of fraud. There's lots of fraud. There's lots of fraud.
Yeah, but I actually went on his fucking Twitter account today.
Yeah.
and decided to say, "Where's the proof, Mr. Musk?"
Uh-huh.
You like to make a lot of comments about, fraud and everything. Where's the proof? You know,
Oh,
Yeah,
and
hey,
you remember yesterday when he had that press conference, which was highly amusing to watch his kid basically, like dangle on top of his head, and
yeah.
then asshole Trump, was sitting there like, "Oh, look at this," like, and like, because Trump never liked to do that around little kids. He always got angry about that. You read all these accounts of him; he doesn't like that stuff. Musk was like, just like, what he thinks we're stupid?
Oh, you're
Oh,
so
yeah,
lucky to have somebody else to hate. And so it's not
what do you
just
mean hate?
how you
What do you
hate.
mean hate? What do you mean hate?
You
All
don't
right.
like Musk.
All right,
Ken,
Musk. All right. Well, I have a feeling Alex has all these things he wants to.
Yeah, Alex, say something.
it's 11:20. We've had it.
11:20. Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I'm sorry I blew up.
we
I
haven't-
kept quiet for
we
the
haven't
most of the
discussed,
thing. But the
AI.
concept of talking about not following the law and, dumping and dumping and dumping, they're breaking the law, and you're ignoring 4 million people who came into the US illegally in 2024.
Oh,
Ken,
That's a big phenomenon.
Ken, I do have one question for you. If
What?
somebody walked into a place
Yeah.
with stamps and she was wearing a sable and a diamond ring, sable coat and a diamond ring, and it was an 80-year-old woman, and that's all she had was the sable coat that her husband gave her on her wedding and her diamond wedding ring.
I'd write a play about it. I mean, it'd be a very good play.
Are you saying that instead of getting food stamps, she should have to go to a pawn shop and pawn that? I mean, how
depends how old she is. She could still make some money on the street. I mean, it makes sound like a good.
So you're in favor. You're in favor of prostitution, which is against the law.
There are so many lonely men. It just
Yes,
can't
I know you're
connect.
one of them.
I'm just saying, it's like you got to take a look at the other side and what the country was going through. I don't know which states, but definitely California, with what they call the Soro DAs. Oh, it's not a crime unless it's more than $950. So the kids come in, they just walk in, fill a basket, leave. And they go from one store to the next store to the next store and make sure they don't take more than $950. Eventually, the stores close down. And the point is, and you don't want to go there, or they do a smash and grab in an iPhone store. You don't want to go there where that kind of thing is happening, because maybe there's going to be gunfire or something. It isn't a question about the value of the goods they took. It's a question of chaos and anarchy. So if you want to talk about law and order, you have to talk about, yes, you don't want the president to be breaking the law, but you don't want to have illegalities going on where everybody just decides what's okay and what's not okay. There's a set of rules. And you have.
But if the president doesn't follow them, if
Yeah,
the president says there's no set of rules for him, then why should anybody else say, "Oh, well, wait a second, hold it. We do have a dictator." No, this is the United States. If the president's saying there's no set of laws, then there's no set of laws.
Yeah.
Don't you? You have to understand that the president, no pun intended here, the president is setting the precedent.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I understand that. I understand what you're saying. I felt that way very, very much during the Iraq War, and went with that, I forgot his name, the guy who went in the hearings about different stuff, or Reagan with the October surprise, making a deal with Iran and the hostages. And they said, like, well, if all these guys are breaking the law, why shouldn't I, shoplift or pickpocket or sell drugs? Because, seeing people are not following the laws at the top. You're correct.
Unless it's a dictatorship, right?
But, and except unless it's a really strong dictatorship like Saddam Hussein had going in Iran, then, everybody's going to follow the law that he says, whatever he says. Tuesday, he says you have to walk backwards. We're going to all walk backwards. Otherwise, you're going to kill me and the rest of my family.
Actually, Saddam Hussein never did that in Iran. He did it in Iraq.
I mean, in Iraq, sorry, in Iraq, yeah.
Oh.
Iraq, Iran, same thing, one letter. It's Iran or Iraq, Iran to Iraq, whatever. So yeah, that's all. But it's let's see what happens if he goes crazy and he goes nuts. There'll be a coup.
He's already gone.
There'll be a coup that can happen anywhere.
Well, yeah, the coup's going to be in his favor. Anyway, Alex might have some stuff he wants to do, right?
Alex,
No, we did. I just want to mention this thing. We haven't talked too much about DeepSeek and AI. And I know Frank's been going on and on. Some of this you heard, Mike, about, some kind of AI revolution where Frank has this idea that you're going to be able to turn off the power in China and Russia or vice versa, based on, who gets there first to, it's called artificial general intelligence, which again, is probably, I don't think we're going to get there anytime soon anyway. But the more interesting thing again is this, how China is going to beat us on it, which get for because what the U.S. keeps talking about with their AI is they want a closed system. They want everybody has to use the U.S. AI, and you can't interchange between China, or any other country in our AI essentially. But the history of computer technological development shows. I mean, look at Apple versus the PC. Open architecture almost always wins because it allows you to experiment. And again, that's what the Chinese are doing with DeepSeek. Anybody can take it and do whatever they want with it. And the U.S. talking about, you can't. Well, first off, that you can't use the Chinese stuff, of course. But what they basically want is a U.S. monopoly on it. But again, I don't think that's going to work because again, I think that's going to choke innovation if you're only in that U.S. silo and you need Chinese and people from different countries in AI working on it and able to cross pollinate essentially, and work without constraints of governments if we're going to make progress on that. So I think actually because Frank doesn't say anything about this. Again, he does computer programming, should know this kind of thing. But again, Frank has this idea that Frank has always been about control. That,
wait, Alex,
it has to benefit the U.S. and only the U.S.
Frank isn't here, so he can't explain himself or defend himself. So don't.
Okay, I was interested because again, JD Vance, I guess, is talking about there was some big AI conference in Europe that he went, Vice President Vance, and again he's pushing this idea of only essentially banning everybody, all our allies from using DeepSeek and using any Chinese version of AI. But again, I don't think that's going to work because again, China understands that again having an open system is better for innovation. So that's what I'm saying. That's why they made DeepSeek public, and they're anybody can use it. So you can take it and basically do anything, download it and do anything you want with it. But again, there's they even some congressperson, I think a Republican, proposed law, that you would be arrested for using DeepSeek.
All right. Well, Alex, I have to say something else here. Alex, it's not going to happen because, as we know, with the nuclear bomb, okay, all right, we tried to keep it a secret for ourselves. It wasn't. Not only that, with the hydrogen bomb in particular, we didn't. I mean, they developed that with Sakharov being a prime example.
And that's actually what Lenny was saying to Frank on Monday.
But the idea is that it's going to get out. In other words,
it already is out. It already is out.
Yeah. So I don't think.
And the Chinese showed that they can, they can make a cheaper, more efficient version, essentially, even with inferior processors, essentially.
It doesn't matter. I think the dangers of AI, which we're not there yet, thankfully. But sooner or later,
again, I think in general, Frank has this has this rosy picture about AI too. That like,
Yeah, well,
you know, all these tech billionaires who actually have a very dark, but they're happy. They think they can use AI to control the rest of us. And that, well, that AI isn't good. You know, AI could be used actually like to free people from, you know, the drudgery of like ordinary work. Like, you know, again, let's say use AI. You know, you have a driverless car. You know, computer can drive you wherever you want. I mean, you can use that to put out, you know, all drivers out of business, but you can also use that, you know, to, yes, no drivers, but that means nobody has to pay, you know, that, you know, that then think how much cheaper you don't have to hire, you know, bus drivers at the MTA or, you know, on the trains or whatever. But that means again, you don't have to pay that there. You can maybe make the MTA free, or again, your equivalent
You
in
know,
LA that you can
and
ride the because you don't have that cost. You can, you
Alex,
know, you can use it
if you
that way.
if you get rid of all the humans on the planet, it won't, you know, then you won't have to pay for anything.
Yeah.
That's the danger of AI. And second of all, it
Well,
goes
the argument
when
is you get rid of like the drudgery of work, like, you know.
like computers were supposed to do, right? Computers were supposed
Yeah,
to say,
I
"Oh, we're
mean,
not
some
going to
people
be
are
able."
skeptical. Yeah.
Well,
And we
there's an interesting sit there. It's like, how do you know that the data banks they're looking at are correct? Let's take an issue like 9/11. So you ask, did 9/11, was that an inside job? So the AI is going to go back and look at whatever data exists. Again, a certain percentage of the data is going to say it was Mossad did it. And another part of the data is going to say Lyndon Johnson came back to life and he did it. And then somebody else says, oh, it's all myths. It's sort of like, you know, what do you believe in Easter Island? There was nothing, you know, 9/11 was 19 Arabs who, you know, stole the planes and went in there and it's all that. So it's only can give you an answer based on the data it's looking at. If that data is false, what kind of an answer can it give you? You know, I mean, there's a guy that we know, I think it's Aaron Reyes.
Oh, Reyes, yeah.
Yeah, I have to, we got to do a session with him because he said he's been doing AI for like 10 years. So he knows about it. He's in IT. And it's, I don't know, it's not, I don't think it's something to freak out about, you know, like you're going to come.
it will be, but by that time we'll be unable to freak out.
Yeah.
Well, here's an AI horror story again.
Okay,
Here,
let's
this
go.
happened to Ted Rall. I don't know if you heard about this. That you'll see again if you type his name again. He's a political cartoonist. So apparently, if you put his name into OpenAI, it says he again Ted Rall again is actually again he's been it was a runner-up for the Pulitzer Prize. That he, according to ChatGPT, he doesn't exist. And this is because, again, back in 2015, you see actually he wrote an article about how maybe he was going to sue, you know, basically ChatGPT was returning all of these nonsense stories about Ted Rall. That again, that he was guilty of plagiarism because again, ChatGPT, you know, gets things wrong. And so he wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal that, you know, about maybe I'm going to sue ChatGPT. So their response to that was basically to remove him entirely from, you know, say that he doesn't exist. So again, that brings, you know, kind of like Stalin did with, you know, the people he had killed so that they just literally disappeared. So again, so this could happen to a lot of people in the future again.
But that brings up an interesting point though, Alex. Alex, that brings up an interesting point. Can somebody who doesn't exist sue you?
Right. Oh, yeah. And here's the funny part here. You see here again. So after they like disappeared him, when they asked again, you know, prizes that he had won here, who won the 1995 Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Award in cartoons, they gave it to a completely different person that wasn't like even nominated or something. It's that nutty. They just like here again, yeah. Who are the three
What I
finalists
keep getting,
for Pulitzer Prize? It's
when I
96.
use it, I try to get an answer instead of going through 47 different websites. But sometimes it'll come back and say, well, that's a very controversial thing and I can't give you an answer. You know, it'll do that if you ask it certain political questions.
Yeah, but you know something? I just thought of something.
What's
Ted
that?
Rall, Ted Rall doesn't have to pay his taxes.
Right.
Oh no, he said, yeah, he said, if I don't show up in the IRS records, can can I get away with it?
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't
If they
exist.
say I don't exist, I could just I think the IRS still knows who he is. The private
He
side.
doesn't. It doesn't. No. The IRS, if he doesn't exist, the IRS can't make him exist. The idea
Right.
is, and he doesn't have to pay his bills. He doesn't have to pay anything. He said, how can I order your services if I don't exist? Trump would love this.
Yeah.
It'd
And
be
he
an
pointed out
excuse
again,
for him not to pay
your iPhone, I don't know if this is going to be Android later, but Apple is going to use Chat GTP in like future versions or something. So again, if you search for Ted Rall with his own iPhone, is he going to show up basically?
Don't you get that? Do you guys belong to LinkedIn?
No, I won't do that.
No. Well, I don't know. It's a business thing. They're always
I know.
they misidentify me as an accountant or a doctor.
Really?
Wasn't
Well,
even
maybe
me,
there could be a Ken Aaron who's
right. A serial killer, whatever. Oh, Jim came back. I thought he left.
I'm not the only
Hello,
I'm not the
welcome
only
back.
Alexander Stavropoulos out there, so
You're
I occasionally
Stavropoulos.
get people saying, "Are you?" My God, it's not.
Well, I'm the only. I have to tell you something. I'm the only Mike Jankowitz in the Actors Union.
But with
And
that
one
spelling,
time
Mike, there might be another Michael Jankowitz with JANCOITZ or
Well, actually, it can't be that
another
way.
spelling. Yeah.
I have in SAG-AFTRA and Actors Equity, I have the name. So
Okay,
nobody can come in
Not allowed. Yeah.
with something very close. But even so, I once Googled myself and I saw a great review of a performance that I gave on a TV Western series.
Really?
As a main guest star. And it was a really glowing review. There was only one problem. I never did it.
Right.
There more than one Jim Dingman out there?
You got to take credit for that. I wanted guys. I don't know if you were all. I don't think you were all party. The Jim did a great job interviewing this guy about about the blacklist.
Yeah, no, we were there. We were on that.
Yeah, we were there.
So that I was really. I put it. It's up on the internet if you want to watch the interview. But
we were at it, Ken.
Yeah. So his comments about
actually Mike asked about 5 questions, as I recall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of hogged it.
But
his
comments about Wizard of Oz being a political issue.
The Wizard of Oz.
No, the novel is supposed to be political.
The Wizard of Oz, capitalism. You know
something? Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz, right?
Yeah.
The original book, also at one point called for the extermination of Native Americans.
Get them out of the way.
They said they were great. They had their moment of glory. We don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
So
headdresses.
So before we post these guys, there's very few guys who are very few heroes who can retain their heroic stature upon examination.
Read what Churchill said about at different points. It's again, he said
Churchill
pretty nasty stuff, including again, I forget. Churchill, he talked about we need to get rid of all the Indians. Meaning again,
the Indians. Yeah. But Churchill at least his ideas evolved to a point. I mean, some of them evolved more than others, but the idea is they did evolve. There are some people who, from the beginning to the end, maintain their racism or whatever, and they don't develop. They don't evolve. And if you don't evolve, if a species doesn't evolve, it dies out. And if a person doesn't evolve,
Again, I don't get why, all these right-wing Jewish Americans think Trump isn't anti-Semitic, but yeah.
No, Trump is, no, I'll give you this much. Trump is not anti-Semitic. He's racist in other ways, but he's not anti-Semitic. Of course, to me, if you're racist, it's bad enough. I mean, I'm against all forms of racism. But Trump isn't anti-Semitic. But what Trump is he's transactional. And more than that, he goes, it's the whole racist thing doesn't matter to him. It's like, so what? If racism works for him, because look at it this way. This is the danger about Donald Trump. He's not let's at least take the assumption for now that he's not at all anti-Semitic. I don't believe he is. I know people who knew him. He's a jerk. He's a schmuck. He's an asshole. He's an idiot. But, that's the one thing, the one saving grace maybe is he's maybe racist against everybody else and their mother, but not against Jews. But look at it this way, though. This is the dangerous part. If Trump isn't anti-Semitic, why is he accepting the support of anti-Semites? He's had him at Mar-a-Lago when his own grandchildren are Jewish.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the danger that how far will he go for his own, to salve his own insecurities?
Well,
how far will he go?
Yeah, Mike, I got a question for you. What did you say about transactional? Is that a new area of evil?
Transactional does not necessarily have to be evil, no, but it can be used for evil.
Well, what do you mean by transactional?
In other words, it's a deal.
What is it? What's in it for me? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I give you something, you give me something, et cetera, et cetera.
But that's life.
That's not all of life. Some people do things without expecting something in return. They may feel good about it. That's what they get in return, but they don't expect something equal or from the other side of the same kind of thing.
Yeah, but and thieves try to get something and not pay for it. I mean, so
no. Your mother loved you even and took care of you and gave you things even if you didn't give her things back. Right? Your mother would give you a gift, and then on your birthday.
Yeah, parents take care of children. That's right.
I mean, there's a lot in life.
The people I know that did well raising their children required the children to contribute. You take out the garbage, you clean the room, you do this, you do that.
Why did they do that?
You don't just live here and eat the food.
No. But not all the time. A lot of times they did it not because they expected a payback for taking care of them, but because they wanted their kids to be responsible citizens when they grew up.
So that's transactional.
That's not transactional. They were
I'm not understanding, because you can't mean that. You can't mean that I go in and get my hair cut and then I pay the guy. That's bad.
No, that's transactional. That's not bad.
Okay.
But there are some things that are transactional that are bad. Transactional itself is just a system. It's just an operating system.
Okay, so it's not good or evil. It's not a new crime.
It doesn't have a character of good or evil and everything like that. It's like trying to say, is my car's engine inherently good or evil?
Okay, now when the racist thing, you sound like you were being critical of somebody who was not Jewish enough. He was a self-hating Jew. So he didn't he allowed his children who were Jewish to be in the presence of somebody who was anti-Semitic. He should have been truer to the Jewishness and protect the Jewish and fight for Jews.
Hold on, wait a second.
It can be an extreme case of being too associated with your tribal tendencies, or and a case of not having anything associated with it, either extreme, right?
I have to just make one comment about what you said. That's not what I said. That has nothing to do with what I said. It wasn't the point I was making. It was a completely different thing. I don't know what you're talking about.
You said
What I
when
said,
Don, you said when Trump had people in the House who were anti-Semitic. I don't understand why he did that. His children are Jewish,
oh, I understand why he did it. And
but
I
you
didn't
thought it
say
was. I thought you felt it was
no,
irresponsible.
his grandchildren are Jewish, and Trump
Yeah,
himself isn't Jewish.
yeah,
So again, no. What I said was, here's a guy who is not anti-Semitic, who
right.
deals with the Jewish community, is very supportive of some Jewish issues, as long as they're not liberal, which is 90% of Jewish issues. But the 10% that isn't liberal, he's supportive of, and his daughter and son-in-law and his grandchildren are Jewish.
Yeah.
And then he has somebody coming in to the White House who wears swastikas and endorses swastikas and
So
hates Jews and thinks they should be murdered, and actually has a dinner for them, and
okay.
and garners and and desires their support. In other words, in other words, accepts their support uncritically.
Yeah, that's kind of
So
very Christian,
no, 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 no,
And
no, no.
Jesus spent time with, prostitutes and thieves. It says,
Excuse
they're
me.
just people.
He spent time with prostitutes and thieves. He didn't spend a lot of time with vicious anti-Semites.
I don't know.
No, he didn't. He could say, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do," yeah, which is supposed to be said on the cross. But the idea is he could have said things like that. However, he didn't welcome the endorsement of people who hated Jews.
Oh,
Jesus didn't do that.
he was a Jew freak. He was like he
He
was,
was Jewish, and
he
he was
was
a
like,
rabbi.
Jews are important.
Well, he was like saying, I
I
mean,
know he
that
was Jewish.
Michael, what are
he
you
was.
talking about? Like, first of all, Jesus was Jewish.
Yeah.
I know.
He
I
was
just
a
said it.
prophet. I mean, it's and then the first book of the Gospels are written years after he died,
Right.
decades after he died. Mark is written decades after he died, and
Jim,
I mean, it's
Jim, don't talk to me. Talk to Ken. He brought that
Yeah.
up.
Oh, I'm
well,
just trying to needle you. I'm just
He
trying to
we
say
know
that.
that, but I'm just saying,
I
like,
mean, when you say you're saying that,
was
how much if somebody is racist,
no, no, no.
certain.
Ken, you're not very good at saying what I said. What
Okay.
I was trying to say
All
that
right. I'm
dangerous.
guilty of that. I take it back. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Right. One of
You're correct.
the most dangerous things about Trump, I think, is that because I was saying Trump isn't anti-Semitic,
Right.
but he'll welcome vicious anti-Semites. He'll welcome their support. He'll welcome them into Mar-a-Lago. And I said, here's a guy whose daughter and son-in-law and grandchildren are Jewish, and he welcomes guys who would just as soon eradicate every Jew off the face of the planet.
Uh-huh.
well,
That's dangerous transactionalism.
well, look, he made his stupid comments about those jerks down at Charlottesville,
Yeah.
and look, man, remember, he is a New Yorker. He is
Mhm.
a New Yorker from a particular period of time. Frankly, he's close to age to Kenny, right? But he's only a
Right.
few
Oh
years
yeah,
older
yeah,
than you
that's
and
right.
me. He's only a few years older than us. And
Uh-huh.
again, his behavior is here's this guy who was playing hooky going to the village.
Yeah.
His father catches him and decides to send him to a military academy as punishment because he was an out of control little asshole as a young person. You read about his behavior with his peers. He was a little nasty. He was a big nasty son of a bitch. And his father said, "Okay, I'm going to punish you, sending you up to New York Military Academy," which is where he went. Imagine if his father had never done that and he kept on going to the village. We would never be worried about Donald Trump. He would have gotten absorbed in the craziness of the village in the early to mid '60s, and boom, who knows what he would have wound up doing. But his whole behavior, even the behavior like, oh, well, let's like, move them, well, we're gonna move them out of here and they're gonna have a better life. I mean, how much of that is just New York, you know, just New York BS behavior. I mean, it just is amazing to me how he acts like that. It's quintessential. Look, we had him as a client. I didn't do the selling. Someone else did the selling to Donald Trump. He got the account. I refused to deal with it. I said, I don't want to see that bastard. So, but my colleague had to deal with Trump associates, and they paid their bills on time. By the way, they would screw us around 30 days, but we went and did work for them for about 3 years, and I mean, I said, and so I would the foreman would come back from the job, and I'd say, well, did you see that son of a bitch? No, he wasn't there. But the one time he came, and Trump is like, I mean, he is indeed nuts. He gave the guys big tips. He gave them cash, and then the person who organized the Veterans Parade, who was Vinnie McGowan. Vinnie McGowan worked in Battery Park City, got his job. He did several tours in Vietnam as a Marine. He got his job based on his relationship with Donald Trump. He became the head of security for Battery Park City. Now, one day I come walking into their office in there. That was where, what's his name used to be? The guy was in the Brigadier General of the militia, who was an IMAS guy.
Arnie Albert.
Arnie was there. And so Vinny's there, we're talking, and and then I said, oh, well, Vinny, I understand you really like Trump. He said, oh, yeah, you know what he did just a couple of months ago? I said, what? Some guy had retired from the army. He went out with Trump, spent a whole day with Trump. And what made me believe this was I've been around very wealthy real estate people in New York, and they are crazy. A lot of them are very crazy.
Yeah.
Trump gave the guy a $9,500 check as a thank you for his service, his military service. Remember, below $10,000, so he doesn't have to report it. And I remember telling that to somebody, and he said, I remember I told him one guy, and he said, I can't believe that. I said, well, go ask Vinny. Vinny's the one guy who told me that. So, Trump is like very quintessentially New York. And in terms of anti-Semitism, I have no doubt that he would probably go in front of Italian Americans or non-Jewish people and talk about, oh, those kikes over there. I mean, I'm sure he used that kind of language.
Not Italian.
Yeah, like, oh, those fucking Jews, that kind of shit. On the other hand, I'm pretty sure he chased Jewish girls. I mean, he chased Richard Jupa's wife in the subway when he was at New York Military Academy. She remember she was hit on by Trump. So, Trump is, like, again, he is a certain type of New Yorker, albeit a New Yorker with a grudge that he didn't grow up in Manhattan, and a New Yorker who felt like isolated by the waspy bullshit of that upper echelon of income that was entrenched in New York City in the 60s. And he sort of said, okay, I'm going to show these guys. So, I mean, and I know people who were real estate people who were Italian American, who were very wealthy, who had gone to Harvard and always resented the rule of wasps. And so, so Trump again is in that kind of milieu to me, except of course he was a wasp himself. But I mean, he's very predictable. Very predictable.
And by the way, his father, when Trump went off to college, his father said,
Tycho's 85 years. Isn't just about time,
Okay, thank you, Frank. When Trump went off to college, his father said, remember, he said, and Trump had many Jewish friends. He said, attach yourself to the Jewish fraternities, to the Jewish groups. He said, that's where you got to go. And that's what Trump did. He's very tied into this, to the Jewish milieu. But the danger of his transactionalism is he'll take support from people. Well, like you said, Jim, he and that you mentioned, but we all know he said, I'm going to run as a Republican because Republicans are stupid. So he will take support from people he's diametrically opposed to, that he would never hang out with, but he'll take support from them and he'll be transactional with them. And that's kind of a danger. I mean, there were not
yeah. Well, remember,
members of the Nazi Party who were not anti-Semitic.
he
but they
would
served their
he would
purpose.
give money for abortion rights.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
back in the day, and you imagine how many abortions that son of a bitch had.
Right.
So, like, I mean, and I mean, again, it's opportunism extraordinaire.
Right.
And, I mean, again, his transformation, and then of course when he got into, mimicking Jesse Ventura, and then going and hanging out with Vince McMahon in WWE. I mean, that's another part of his development. And then at the same time, that TV show, The Apprentice, which, I mean, by then he had all these bankruptcies. He had casinos bankrupt in Atlantic City. He had this, he had that. But the guy was always the wizard of pop, like the Jack in the Box. And frankly, the last 4 years, I got to give the son of a bitch credit. He should have been in jail. He should have been in jail for January 6th, for sure. We should never have to be living through this kind of crap right now. And I wait to find out what happened in that situation vis-a-vis the Justice Department. They wasted 2 years. They should have gone right. I mean, this was like a flagrant abuse.
Well, you got to remember something, though. Merrick Garland and had a lot of pressure on him to not, they were basically telling him, do not do anything that will make this seem like a political witch hunt. People were worried. They didn't want to get labeled that way. And this was a mistake. I agree with you. It was a mistake, but he was under that kind of pressure to make sure.
Yeah, that shows you the problem of having to deal with the framework of liberal Democrats.
Right.
Because I mean, that's where the left has a legitimate critique, because here's this guy who carried out a coup d'etat. Okay? Carried out a coup d'etat. And then guess what? He actually won as a result of it. He's now in power. And he's doing his best to make sure that the restrictions that were on him 4 years ago never return.
Yeah, no, they should have charged him with insurrection, put it to the jury, have him tried, put him away.
Right, exactly.
Then nobody.
They were worried.
Put all the evidence, and that he was behind it, and he did this, he did that, he didn't do this.
But they were worried.
But they weren't willing to. They weren't willing. They're like, oh, we can't do. It's the same.
Worried about losing support support they never had.
Well, it's true that he had.
Comparison, Jim.
Well, again, that's where
they let Reagan off on Iran Contra. That guy dead.
Oh, that was
they should have swept up the whole thing. They should have the Republican Party's name should have been mud, like it was after Watergate. In fact, again, the Republican Party should have gone away, because again, they had the second time they had basically shredded the Constitution after Nixon.
Well,
but we couldn't hurt the presidency. They had him dead to rights. They had him. He broke the law. He lied to Congress. He perjured himself.
Watergate.
They ran drugs.
Well, right. Well, Watergate starts all that. We can argue and debate what happened. The Iran Contra affair was clearly a violation. Congress had put the Bolin Amendment in there.
It's the same mealy mouth logic. Oh, we can't harm the presidency, or by we can't have have it said, oh, a president led an insurrection, even though he did.
Right. Well, that's a contradiction of the whole thing, and now they're left with the consequences of it all. And I don't know what, and Trump, of course, he's going to do his best to consolidate power, to eliminate any opposition, and he ain't playing around. So all these liberals who were like, oh my God, look at this, look at that, it was so funny to watch, as I say, watch Chuck Schumer power to the people. That was pathetic.
Yeah, that BS from Jeffries. They have the Congress, they have the courts, they have the Senate. We can't do anything.
Well, yeah,
but why did anybody elect any of you? You should just disappear for 4 years. Let the rest of
the problem with a lot of people on the left to various degrees on.
These people aren't on this quote.
They're center
We
right.
accept their
Talking about-
terminology of the left. These are centrists.
Let me define it. Left of center. So that
they're
would
not. They're center
What's
right.
the center? What's the center these days?
Well, all right.
Donald Trump?
I'm talking about left of center back then. The problem was that a lot of people think that the other side thinks the way they think.
All
And
right, that's a good point.
So if we think, oh, we're not gonna, disgrace the American system, and I'm sure the Republicans won't disgrace the American system. But that wasn't the case.
Well, then they don't know Trump.
Well, then look, that's where, the Rachel Maddow and all that other stuff. I mean, they're whining away about, but they have a good legitimate right. I mean, you get these guys there who are sworn, a lot of these guys were, they swore, they work for the government. They swore to defend the Constitution. And Trump is basically taking the Constitution and urinating on it every goddamn day. And so, like screw that. Like that is, again, beyond the pale to sit there and do all the nonsense he did this week about Gaza. It's just insanity. And unfortunately, the rest of us have to deal with the consequences of that.
That's right. Oh, by the way, if first of all, what he's done is
Except guys like you who want to go to Canada.
Yeah, yeah, and the idea is I got to start keeping
A punk ass way to get the hell out of here, I must admit.
Well, no. I mean, as a political refugee, I could do it. No, the idea is that you look at something else also that people don't even think about. Trump is basically taking all the heat unwittingly. He's taking all the heat off Netanyahu. Trump is making himself out to be the bad, the anti-Palestinian, the main anti-Palestinian force in the Middle East. Now, okay, that's going to encourage more terrorism, less so against Israel, more so against the United States. But he's also denuded the Justice Department, the FBI. In other words, he's basically neutered it.
Well, I go more than that. I mean,
Trump would love a terrorist attack.
Well, he
Not
would.
against him.
Look at Kash Patel. Like they've already caught Kash Patel, most likely perjuring himself, because they made him say, "Oh, do you know about what's going on in the FBI?" No. Well, supposedly Kash Patel, according to leaked stories, is actually coordinating all that shit. So, and Kash Patel, look at this guy. This guy's like a loyal soldado, for Mr. Trump. And then Tulsi Gabbard, now I must admit, Tulsi made some comments which I tend to agree with about Snowden. I tend to agree with her. And she, because always she was always pretty crazily independent. But, I do, and then the Democrats were, hammering away at Snowden. And I sort of said, okay, I have to say that I do think Snowden should be pardoned. But, hey, I understand you got to make a point to the public. So you're going to say he's a traitor, this and that. But people have to keep in mind, of course, what did he reveal? He basically revealed the power and grasp and breadth of American intelligence around the world. I mean, now this whole issue of the deep state, they have this archaic, I mean, I just listened to this argument. I had an argument with Mr. White just a half hour ago about this shit. Because his idea of the deep state is anybody works for the CIA, anybody works for the Department of State, anybody works for the federal bureaucracy is part of the deep state. Hence, they should be purged. But of course, and Trump's doing a good thing. And I'm listening to this bullshit. And then the other guys chimed in when I defended people who work for AID. Oh, they're all CIA agents. I said, bullshit. I mean, how many of you actually know? Then Sagerton says, well, Jim, you always bring that up. But I said that these guys. I said, well, actually, I do know these guys, and I don't consider them members of the CIA. You may think so, but I don't. And but Michael's just going off on the deep state. He's dismantling the deep state. Isn't that what Pacifica all about? And I said, well, the deep state. Do you think firing and destroying the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice is that quote knocking out the deep state? I mean, come on, man. Anyway.
Well, creating another deep state, and that's what they don't see.
Well, they didn't read Project 2025 because they talked
They're taking over, and he's gonna make them all loyal to him as
That's right, exactly. He wants a deep state that's composed of his chumps.
Psychopaths, yeah.
Right.
His chumps. And they say it openly. They say it openly.
Chumps for Trump. Yes.
I mean, it's not going to be good for the country.
All right. Well, anyway, we got that guy on Sunday. I'm trying to get
All
that.
right.
I'm trying to get that woman lined up. She hasn't gotten back to me, but I have finished her book, which is actually pretty good. This Lily Geismer book. But if she doesn't get back to me, I'm going to shift gears abruptly. And this woman, Rachel Krastill, did a book that is just published by Basic Books on the Franco-Prussian War. And that should be an easy read. And I figure I'll give her a buzz or email because I think I could read this in a week. It's how many pages? It's just a general history of the Prussian War, Franco-Prussian War. It's about 500 pages. Big deal. I can knock that out, and then we'll do that one instead. But the Hitler stuff I've got lined up, that's going to take work. Doing stuff on the rise of Hitler, and then the rise of the right. There's a whole bunch of guys on the right, and actually, I'm glad you came to that Institute of Policy Studies. I didn't. Did they have a good discussion afterwards?
Yeah, 20 minutes.
Well, that's not enough time.
Mostly a lot on, a lot like technical. Well, not technical, but like, why did you choose to do this movie? But they had some Detroitians. I don't know how you say it. Who were who knew the city and were asked, like, oh, who thought he got it right. So
Interesting.
So
he has this film, I guess probably will be put out. I don't know, maybe PBS will pick it up on the bankruptcy of Detroit, and they followed it for like 5 years or so.
Oh, by the way, I've got to tell you guys a couple of things. First of all, I have to say two things about Greg's. Greg's got his this guy wrote this book on the defeat and attrition of the 12th SS Division, June 7th to 11th, which just
That guy's very good. That guy's
yeah,
very good.
well, I'm reading his book. He got a lot of stuff wrong, but he tries. But and also, if you can get that woman that talked about Chartwell,
really?
Chartwell, what a
Really?
babe. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't anything. She was just really good looking and effervescent.
Really?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, guys were coming on, they were sending things in the chat and say, wow, what a babe. And then I had to ask a question because I had to find out for myself. I said, so why did, in other words, why don't you still live in the quarters they gave you at Chartwell? And she said, oh, well, her husband and she were, and as soon as she said husband, they were like frowned, in other words, frown icons coming in, people saying, oh, damn it. And I was disappointed too.
Well, all these horny doofuses. What can I say?
Yeah.
Do they really think a good-looking woman like that? If you have a very good-looking woman, don't get me started on some of these guys. I mean, this sounds like a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, but anyway, hey, it had 45 people on. But
Jim, you're gonna go for Chris Lawrence's thing, right?
That was yesterday.
That was yes. I thought it was the 17th.
Well, he has something yesterday on China.
Oh, okay.
Which I couldn't do. I was doing art. I was doing what I was doing. So
now I'm going to assume that
tonight he did it. Tonight he did it. Excuse me.
I'm going to assume that Ken, we're no longer on the show, so I'm going to tell you something else. The Broadway musical Operation Mincemeat is coming in next week.
What?
And I know
Get out of here!
Musical.
A musical?
A musical comedy.
Get out!
Of Operation Mincemeat. Kid you not?
Get out of here! That's ridiculous.
And dancing and joking around and
what?
Intergender. In other words, girls playing boys.
Are you kidding me?
Absolutely not. And I know two of the people working on it. Now, apparently, the people who did this farce, and it is a farce. I mean, literally, it was meant that way. The people who did this did a lot of historical research. So they reached out to me because these are two of the people in the production team are two of the actors I use in my reading in Normandy. Very good, very talented people. But they reached out to me to see if I knew people who knew about military history who might want to get involved in that angle of it. In other words, they want to go to Historicon and to Frank Liberty's thing. And they also, so tomorrow evening, right in the middle of the diner, I have to go for at least some of the time. Tomorrow evening, they're actually doing a military history, like trivia kind of thing tomorrow down at the Oculus. And they said, yes, we can comp in some of your military history guys. So if you want, guys want to go.
On what? On Operation Mincemeat?
On Operation Mincemeat. And
yeah, but they
military
want to do a musical about it? What kind of stupid shit is that?
You have no idea. You look it up.
Well, to me, it shows you. I'll never forget the company commander of the infantry company that first went into Dachau.
Yeah.
That was from the 45th Infantry Division. Big, tall guy. His comment to me about all this, he says, Jim, when I'm dead, they can say that Mickey Mouse liberated Dachau.
Right.
No, I mean, this is the realm of stupidity we're entering into now.
Well, these are people who
they have artistic license. I have the right to say, look, I mean, I could sort of put their artistic zest into certain contexts about how, the more distant we are from the generation that fought that war, the less, I mean, it's amazing. It's truly amazing. Because you listen to some of these people give you this relativistic bullshit about World War II. I have no patience for it. None.
Well, these are people,
Zero.
I mean, there's no doubt they believe that the Allies were good and the Nazis are bad.
Yeah, I know, but it's like that stupid movie, the movie they did about the attempted assassination of Hitler with all the ignorant bastards.
Yeah, those are terrible movies.
I mean, exactly. I mean, it's like like please. I mean, it's. I mean, sure.
So wait a minute. The first one was Walter Pigeon.
No, this is the one with Tom.
This is with what's his name?
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, the guy that.
And then Bruno.
The Walter Pigeon.
A-list group of people.
Okay.
Robert Taylor playing Churchill for one line.
Yeah, and it's funny watching the Trump administration for the past 3 weeks. I sort of would get to the point where I said, okay, I can't, it's enough of this shit. I would turn to a science fiction dystopian movie because it was actually more fun to watch.
Yeah, but it's
but this stuff in real time is dystopian, totally.
Mm-hmm. That's the problem.
It's dystopian. It's like a sci-fi movie.
I can't take all this Trump stuff, so I'll go watch 1984. No, you're watching the same stuff.
Well, I was watching this TV series Silo on Amazon, and it was it's a very weird series. It's about sort of a post-apocalyptic America, but I would watch it, and then I'd say, and then one thing I took from it was all these apocalyptic movies, they have the whole thing where they stress the family. The family is very important. They become the invaders coming from outer space type movies in recent years. The family unit is the most important thing. It's your love for your kids, your parents, your father and mother, all this kind of shit. That triumphs all. And it's sort of interesting to watch that in these movies because you think about the situation we're in now, it sort of makes you think about your immediate family. Because everything else around you is completely crazy.
Except Village of the Damned. That wasn't about protecting your family. That was about
that's also interesting that would be raised as a film. I remember I saw that movie 4 times when it opened up.
In 1960? Yeah.
Yeah, when it opened up, I thought it was one of the great. That actually scared me. It was like a brick wall, and that scared me. But that was like around the time when Twilight Zone was the hip thing to watch.
Right.
And I mean, Kenny remembers that. You were in high school, weren't you? When did you graduate from Brooklyn Tech, Kenny?
I don't know, it's 63, I guess.
Yeah, so Twilight Zone was a big deal when you were a kid, right? Didn't you like Twilight Zone?
Sure.
Yeah.
And I liked it. There was a remake of it that was even better. But
That's true.
sure, like it's kind of campy, but good, good,
And the
good.
Outer Limits. The Outer Limits was
Outer
a
Limits.
that was a
Outer
great
Limits.
Some of the best science fiction
That's
scripts
right.
on television.
But all
Absolutely.
the streaming services have very good sci-fi on all their streaming services, and so it's very interesting to watch the sci-fi shit on the streaming services these days.
Yeah, but the trouble is, like, you watch these apocalyptic stories on there, and you say to yourself, "Holy shit, that's what's going on now."
Yeah, but they're all about rebellion.
I totally agree with Michael. I think it's extremely entertaining with the press. The press secretary's much more entertaining than in the past because she's challenging and they have it open for anybody. There's less, it's more.
What, the
dialogue.
blonde? The blondie has it now?
Yeah, the blonde, right? The blonde.
Give me a break, Kenny. You're just looking at her tits.
No, it's just you don't see her tits. She's mostly above the shoulders. But in any that plus following it on the news and the fact that they're so transparent about what they're doing, whatever issues whatever they're putting out is on the internet. It's on a site called whitehouse.gov. And and there's all his opinions floating back and forth. There's always news happening. Trump is providing a real circus, like he always does to get media. And the same thing with Musk on the side, his sidekick. It's sort of like one of those cowboys things we used to watch. Musk is like, the Indian with a blanket. He's got a shotgun underneath it, Yancey Derringer, It's more like one of those cowboy movies, and they're shooting this and that. And Trump is moving over to be the nasty villain in the saloon,
Yeah.
Maybe the gunslinger will come up after him, but the Dems are running around. So it's a very newsy and to me very interesting. It isn't a sappy thing. It's threatening and it's dangerous, and it's take it apart and everybody's going, no, what about our money? The thing I'm shocked when they come up with these things and they say you're going to close down AID, USAID, which is Agency for International Development. And they say, well, 1.5 million people are going to die from AIDS because you're not stopping HIV, and also from malaria. The whole world is depending upon our, what's the largesse, giving out things. The world is depending upon us. I say, how do we get in a position like this? I thought we're the villains who are causing all the coups. Now they're coming up and say, but we need your money, and we need this, and we need that. And you got to teach these people how to get along with their neighbors. You have to go to Syria or some other jungle place and teach the people they should love each other. So what the hell's going on here? The whole world is depending on us.
Guess what?
That's terrible. That's terrible.
Guess what? Americans have to be aware of the fact that we've been a global power for 100 goddamn years.
Right.
Ever since the Spanish-American War. And the fact that some Americans don't like to pay attention to that, fuck them. That's on their ass. That's on their fucking ass.
Fuck them. That's a good attitude.
No, fuck them. Because they want to then sit there and get into this fortress festung America kind of mentality. That will reap the bad wind. That'll reap the benefits of that, boy, and that'll be negative to us.
Well, you got to you got to teach them how to fish. You can't keep giving them a
fish.
Well,
McDonald's fish sandwich. You got to say, let's build a society here. Let's get some commerce going. Let's get some principle, education.
I got to correct you on something. Syria may be a lot of things, but it's not a jungle.
No, not Syria. I'm just but it isn't just limited to Syria. It's all over the world. It's mostly in Africa. Most of the places they go in is Africa. But it's I know.
Well, actually, they spend far less on Africa than they used to per capita. But you know, look
per capita, because that's got
look at this
Africa is
stupid,
where there's
that
a high fertility.
that reporter who caught Musk in his dumb shit stuff about, oh, they're sending 50,000 condoms to
Oh,
Mozambique,
right.
Gaza, and then it turns out they're sending them to Mozambique,
That's
which is
insane.
genuinely
Why are they sending them there?
because they're trying to have control of HIV/AIDS.
Now,
And
why is there an epidemic in Mozambique, but there isn't an epidemic in Staten Island?
well, I think there's a difference in terms of the
Why?
health
What's
care about
going on?
HIV/AIDS.
But after 100 years, Mozambique is still primitive and just
I mean, 100 years. It
dainty
was
place
a
to
free
live.
colony. It was a colony. It was under colonial rule up to
Until what? 3 years
1974.
ago? When did
Up
they
to
get liberated?
1974.
74.
Then
Okay.
they got, and then in the northeastern part of the country, they have essentially an ISIS type movement in full blown operation.
Okay. Send
Oh,
them some condoms.
is it in the objective interest of the United States to have countries fall to ISIS type movements? I don't think so.
To send them some well, I don't know. Send them some condoms. That'll help.
Oh, you know, look, Trump is a fucking fuck him.
Oh, stop it with Trump. Come on, you keep doing that.
I mean, I know it's no.
It sounds like you got a what do they call that? A boner on him. I mean, you want to get to bed with
boner.
All right. Okay.
Trump. I can't get him
enough
out of my
of
head.
Ken,
right, I'll see
Ken,
you.
we won't put it all on Trump. We'll
I'll
say
It
see
isn't Trump. This is all
Oh.
stuff that's been developed by the
Ken.
State Department.
Ken, we'll say it's the fault of Trump and all his supporters. Okay? Does that make
No,
sense?
it isn't. It's the Bush.
I will be interested tomorrow. I'm going to go to SIA tomorrow, so I'm going to be interested tomorrow to hear what all those kids have to say about the fact they don't got jobs. They don't got jobs coming for them. He's cut back on all the internships at the State Department. I mean, he's a stupid bastard. I mean, can I be clear about that? That doesn't benefit us as Americans.
There you go.
Period. Fuck him. Fuck him.
Fuck. Okay. See, I told you. You got a horn for him. You want to fuck him. Okay.
Well, Melania won't. So.
Okay.
You know
That's
what?
enough. Hey, it's what is it?
Yeah.
Midnight, 10:20, 12:20. I hereby give you guys permission to hit the hay.
That's all I needed to hear.
Okay. Thanks. And I please forgive me for my rude behavior. I should stand there and listen, but you know, it's that New York thing. Can't handle it. Okay, guys. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye, Mike. You're the last one. Bye-bye. Okay, and I'm going to say, that's it, folks. That's the end of Going Viral for the 12th of February, 2025. Thanks for watching and see you next week.